Hello, and sorry for the slight delay then. Just as I was about to go live, the picture that should have been going out live changed to something else, so I had to reboot the whole thing. Hope it's okay now. Hope it's okay. Welcome to our live feed. This is we're calling it the Miami Grand Prix preview, but there's so much going on at the moment that we're going to be talking about a lot of things, I'm sure, as well as the upcoming Miami Grand Prix this weekend, which is, of course, a sprint race. I'm sorry to say, but anyway, it is what it is, and we'll be talking about that. But I guess first and foremost is to remember this day as a very important day in the heritage of the sport, if that's the right word, because it's 30 years since we lost Ayrton at Imola. Not only Ayrton, but Roland Ratzenberger as well over the same weekend. Roland on the Saturday, Ayrton very sadly on the Sunday. What a frightful weekend that was. That's the poster that McLaren have put out. Very nice too, I think, commemorating 30 years since his passing. And there you can see all the different Ayrton Sennas that we knew and loved over the years. Nice to see them, including him having the ride back with Nigel at Silverstone on the Williams there as well. And we shouldn't forget, as I say, Roland Ratzenberger, who lost his life the day before. There he is on the left there, next to his teammate David Brabham in the Simtech team. Roland, very unlucky. Looks as if he went off at... get the picture back. He went off at Acqua Minerale the lap before. Didn't spin or anything, but sort of got his way back on the track, probably damaged the front wing a little bit, sort of dusted off the tyres, kept going past the pits, and then the front wing failed going into Tosa high speed, put him into the guardrail. Very sad. Great guy. Didn't know him very well. I met him a couple of times, but really good guy. And of course, Ayrton will always miss and always remember with great fondness. So, yeah, shouldn't let the beginning of the show go without mentioning the importance of May 1, 30 years on from that weekend at Imola 1994. Lots going on though. Lots going on is in the build up to Miami. So many teams doing reboots, different liveries, different sponsorship announcements, and on top of it all, we got the whole Adrian Newey thing. So it's all fairly frenetic, isn't it? Which was why I decided to go to Scotland over the weekend and go to a lovely little town called Churnside in Berwickshire, near Duns, and remember another friend of mine that we lost relatively recently, Ian Scott Watson, who was basically Jim Clark's manager right up until about 1963, his first World Championship win. And then, very unfortunately, he was kind of sidelined by the Clark family, to put it bluntly. They felt Jimmy would be better off just sort of having his own career life working with Colin Chapman, and he wasn't really encouraged to go to races, although Jimmy did keep up his friendship with Ian and often met up with Ian when he was in Scotland or even in London. Sometimes he'd say, Ian, come down here for the, down to the Hilton for the night or whatever, and they'd have dinner. And so they remained very good friends, and it was wonderful to go to Churnside on the Sunday and meet a lot of Clark people from that part of the world, if that's the right description. They're all great people, as you can imagine. It was pouring with rain, it was cold, but it was fabulous. And what I found absolutely absorbing were some of the letters from Ian that he'd kept all these years that were now on display, and I just wanted to show a few of them. We're going to get on with all the questions and comments very soon, but I just wanted to do this because it's amazing, really, the history here. This is John Webb writing to Ian Scott Watson in 1959. This is about that famous Boxing Day race meeting when Jim Clark drove the Lotus Elite and drew the attention of Colin Chapman, but also drove the Gemini Formula Junior car. And I had no idea that was actually set up by John Webb, and all credit to him for that, because he could see a talent there and gave that opportunity to Jimmy, to Ian Scott Watson. And Ian, I've got to say, I asked Ian once how much he thought he'd spent on Jimmy's career in those years, and he reckoned it was about £30,000. That's 1957 through to about 1960. So £30,000 then was a lot of money. And he never saw that again. I mean, he was obviously very good friends with Jimmy, but it was a friendship as much as it was anything else. And And look at the detail he did. This is Ian writing to the BRSCC, trying to get some starting money for Jimmy. And I love this last bit. This is Nick Syret replying on behalf of the BRSCC. I'm afraid that Jimmy Clark is virtually unknown, and therefore we wouldn't want you to get too ambitious about prize money. Just ridiculous when you think about it now and how it was. Here's another one, Club Lotus. Obviously, Jimmy and Ian Scott Watson had driven down from Scotland to go to this Club Lotus thing in 1960. And Ian had obviously asked for an opportunity to have his tickets refunded, and they said, "Oh, we're very poor, everybody pays for them, and I hope you would like to do the same." So Jimmy Clark had to pay his own ticket to go to the Club Lotus function, where no doubt he was the guest of honour. Lots of lovely stuff like that. This is John Easton Gibson on the BRDC also saying that I'm afraid Mr. Clark is not sufficiently well known for him to merit starting money in this event. That was the sports car race in 1959 and supporting the British Grand Prix. So they were, it was a hard graft, wasn't it? And one of the great things that's just appeared in the Jim Clark Museum is, and it's been out of sight, public sight for a long time, is this amazing gold helmet given to Jimmy by Esso to commemorate winning the 65 World Championship and the Indy 500 in the same year. The only driver, of course, ever to have done that. It's gold inlaid with sapphires and rubies. Just a beautiful thing, and nice to see that on display. That's been in the family for quite a long time. And so, yeah, lots going on. Had the yellow Elan there as well. Jimmy's 67 Elan. Took that for a run in the rain. Windscreen wipers working well. Lights kind of working okay, but absolutely beautiful to drive. Absolutely gorgeous. Revving it through the gears, I was. And engine was great. The twin cam 1600 Lotus Ford engine, rebuilt, got to say, not so long ago by Henry Mann, so not surprising that it's going as well as it has. Twin Webers, and just lovely to drive. Beautiful ride. And there's no better part of the world, really, for an Elan, I think, than those roads around Duns and Churnside in Scotland. And so it was. There we are. I have got also, I've just done an interview chat with Linus Lundqvist, who some of you might know if you've been long viewers of my channel. I met Linus through Rob Wilson years ago. I say years ago, about 2015, I think it was. Rob said, "This guy's really good. You got to, meet up with him and watch and give him any help you can," obviously. And I tried to. He was doing Formula 4 at the time with Double R with Boyo, Anthony Hyatt, and he was really good, really quick. And then he went on to win the British Formula 3 Championship with Boyo. Then he did Euro Formula Open, which was Formula 3 basically in those days. And then he ran out of money, like so many people. But rather than just sit around trying to see what would happen in Europe, he then just got up and went to America and had a little bit of sponsorship that he took there. But he went to America and he made it. He went through the system, went through the regional series into Indy Lights, took 2 years in Indy Lights, won the championship, got the scholarship, and then went into IndyCar. Did a bit of racing last year, did 3 races, and this over the winter, because he'd gone well, he got the Chip Ganassi drive. He's now a paid racing driver at one of the world's premier race series, and he finished 3rd last weekend at Alabama. Really, really happy for him. I mean, I'll put that on a little bit later in the show, but the reason I'm putting it out and posting it is because I think it's a case study and never giving up. And I'd like to think that a lot of European young drivers who can see the path to Formula One, who've got the talent, but the path to Formula One is very, very difficult. Look at this Linus interview, because here's a guy that just got on with it and did a really good job and is doing a great job. And he's now a professional, presumably quite highly paid racing driver, living in Indianapolis, goes back to Sweden quite a lot. What a life he's leading, and it's great. Those success stories I love. Of course, we have them in Europe as well, but in Europe, we don't have the same ladder system to get you into Indy Lights for a start. And secondly, there are many, it's so expensive to get into Formula One, and indeed Formula 2 and Formula 3, that there are very few drivers that actually get there on merit these days without having to bring quite serious money to the team. So here's a good example of a guy that got up and went on with it. And I'm just going to check that I'm live, because after that last episode, it looks as if Looks as if I'm live, doesn't it? Yeah, it says live, 9 minutes, 52 seconds. Have to take their word for that one. Anyway, let's have a look at some questions. I'm going to see how I can do that. I'll bring these up now. Now I'll go to OBS. There we go. Hang on one sec. Sorry. Let's get this little bit of stuff out of it. I don't know why it keeps doing this. It keeps jumping to the center poster before I actually post it. But anyway, there's the center poster, and we've seen that, but it's a nice bit of work. But now we're going to the questions, I hope. Why are we not getting Peter Windsor? Here we are. I'm clicking on Peter Windsor. Here we go. Now we've got the questions. Where have they gone? Here we go. Right here. And now I need to go back here. OBS. Come on. Here we go. And I need to go to the browser. Here we go. I think we've made it, kind of. Living on the edge. This is in the order in which everybody's been stacking up, waiting for me to go live. Thank you so much for all those doing so in advance. Really touched by that. Never take it for granted. Living on the edge. As a child, I was a fan of the black JPS Formula 1 car with the driver with the yellow helmet. I think you mean Ronnie Peterson. Super sweet. Yeah, well, we were all fans of... I mean, what a great year that was, Ronnie and Mario in those cars. And we had a bit of a discussion in the last live stream about whether or not it's... somebody said it was sad that the only racing now is between teammates, could be only between... And I'm saying, well, it's the best racing, really, isn't it? Racing between teammates. And there's a good example, Ronnie and Mario. Any news on Newey? Do you think Ferrari would be able to settle the gardening leave issue for Newey to start working for 26? Thank you. Well, the latest I've heard, and this is kind of via Cameron, who I kind of rely on for my social media updates. This was as per last night, might well have changed, was that it's looking like Adrian's either going to retire or he's going to go to Ferrari. I think apparently he said no to Toto, not his fit really, and he said no to Aston, as we know. I don't think he's going to go to McLaren. And so, yeah, you raised the point about the gardening leave thing. If it's Adrian Newey and it's Ferrari, I can't imagine that Ferrari, with their new HP money as well, let alone all the other stuff, Philip Morris, I can't imagine that they wouldn't offer Red Bull a massive amount of money to have early release of contract. Now, Red Bull may well say, well, there's nothing that will pay for us, nothing will pay us the advantage we might have by Adrian starting late at Ferrari, or indeed not going to Ferrari at all, and just not releasing him early at all. But maybe they might, maybe they might. So I think it's watch this space, isn't it, on that one? Got some super chats already, going to those. Jared Pruitt, thank you very much, Jared. Hi from Texas, Peter. New to Formula One since last season. Just wanted to say I was so fortunate to quickly discover your channel. Thank you very much indeed. That's very kind, Jared. You've tremendously helped my foundational understanding. Blessings. Thank you. That's a very kind message. And this is from Wazef. Hi, Peter. Hope you're doing well. Praying for your good health. Hang on, let me try and get this one. Okay, here we go. I wait for your videos all week. I've got so many questions for you. I hope you don't mind. And sorry, everyone, I'm a Charles fan. Okay, yeah, good. I'm a Charles fan too. I always have been. I've got my signed Charles Leclerc Formula 3 championship winning T-shirt in the cupboard over there. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, speaking of Charles, he'll be going back to Miami, I think. Won't he be thinking, what I've got to do is make sure I don't spin at those high-speed S's in the early part in Sector 1. He did it, same corner. I think it was 2 consecutive days, wasn't it? He did last year. What's he doing? And I was talking to, who was I talking to about this? Somebody involved with the Leclerc operation, and they said, oh, well, you got to realise is that he's not racing Carlos, he's racing Max. That's the only guy he's thinking of, so he's on the limit the whole time. Yeah, well, twice at the same corner. Anyway, we'll see what he does this weekend. I've got the picture, the thumbnail I used for this live stream is actually the Ferrari drivers, very blue overalls, blue jackets, blue background, blue faces, blue glasses, everything, sunglasses, which I kind of like. I've always said that for me, the nicest Ferraris ever were, well, I don't know, I've always said it to myself anyway, were the 64, 65 Ferraris with the blue wheels, 1.5 litre cars, and then the Nart versions, the blue and white ones they had in '64, when Enzo was having the big punch up with the Italian Automobile Federation over the homologation of the Ferrari 250 LM for Le Mans. And because it wasn't homologated, he decided not to enter the car by CFAC Ferrari, but to use Luigi Canetti's entry North American race team, which is why they were blue and white. So yeah, I mean, nice that they've that blue. I think it is not blue actually, and we'll see what the car looks like. This is all partly ties in with the HP sponsorship deal they've just done as well, isn't it? So that's anyway. We'll see. Charles, he'll look a bit different, I think, in blue, and we'll see how he goes. He needs to have a very strong weekend, doesn't he? By which I mean, he needs to, because it's a sprint weekend, he needs to get the car right. He needs to be confident, a little bit ahead of Carlos in the untimed practice. Then he needs to be ahead of Carlos in the qualifying for the sprint. Then he needs to outrace Carlos in the sprint, and then he needs to qualify ahead of Carlos for the Grand Prix. And you get the picture. He's at the moment, Carlos has looked very, very good and very polished. That shunt in Shanghai in qualifying to one side, although I still say, if you're going to have a shunt, recover from it the way he did, and we'll just wipe it off the slate, because he did such a good job of recovery, didn't he? This is Wozaif Plus. Formula One has always had larger-than-life people who have done and meant so much more outside the track, like Seb and Lewis in this generation. Do you think Max and especially Charles should look to follow the example? It's an interesting point you make about example, because there was a time when winning the World Championship was not only an achievement, but it was an honour and a responsibility that the world champion had then to take on behalf of the sport and charities and representation of the sport in terms of its public face. I'm not sure today that you win the world championship and you immediately think, I've got a huge responsibility now to young drivers and to those who are perhaps less fortunate than me. You just tend to think, yes. But you're right. Seb's doing his thing. Lewis has got his thing. Max, I don't want to judge anybody. Who knows what Max does behind the scenes? I mean, the greatest of. Let me rephrase that. I think if you're doing a lot of good work for others and thinking of others, and you're not telling people about it, and people don't get to find out about it on social media, probably adds to the strength of what you're doing. So let's not judge them on what they may or may not be doing. And I think the same for Charles. I mean, Charles is a very good man, and so is Max. I'm sure that in their own way they're doing a lot. And we just perhaps may not see it as visibly as we see it with Seb, who's now retired, and there's no reason why he can't be really visible. And Lewis, of course, who's followed by cameras everywhere he goes anyway. So there's not much point in trying to do anything in secret. Anyway, I've got some more questions from the same person, Wazaif. With Adrian leaving, forget Ferrari. Don't you think Charles should already be on the phone with him and promising him everything he can, given the reports how much say Charles has in the team? Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think Charles needs to do that. I don't know how well Adrian knows Charles, but I'm sure he's got a good opinion on him and good feel for him. It would be more Freddie Vasseur who'd be on the phone to Adrian, saying, have you got any misgivings about this, Adrian? Any issues? Anything that you'd like to change? Anything we can do for you to make this happen? That's sort of what's going on. You can add a few more noughts to my retainer, I suppose. No, I don't think Adrian's that interested in the money. I'm sure he doesn't really need the money, but I think he quite likes the whole concept of Ferrari and Mugello testing his his endurance car that he wants to race, and as he has been recently. So Wazaev says, connected question, if Adrian does go to Ferrari, how do you think he'll take to Charles? And do you think Charles is good enough to have an era-defining dominance like Michael, Seb, Lewis and Max? Well, I've always said Charles is one of the great drivers of this era, along with Lewis and Max. And obviously there's another generation coming up as well, but I'm not talking about that at the moment. But right now, I would say those are the leading three. And I think Charles' ability and his natural feel for the race car is right up there with Max and Lewis. It's just that he's evolved in a different way, just as Lewis has evolved in a different way to Max. All three are different. No two drivers are the same, let alone three drivers. But in terms of the amount of talent he has and his ability to get the best from a racing car, I would say Charles has got everything you need. And he's an intelligent, good person. Of course, he's got a few question marks. His emotions and the way he controls his emotions would be one of them. and having lived with Ferrari and the politics of Ferrari would be another, and the effects of that. But I think, if he's got a great racing car, it's like every driver in the world. If he's got a great racing car with good balance, big sweet spot, he can basically do what he likes with it. And you take a little bit of wing off, and you immediately get what you want from the car. You immediately stiffen the rear roll bar, and you immediately get a response. He's going to be fine, like everybody, and he'll be incredibly good for sure. Same questioner. He's got a lot here, but we'll let go, no problem. With Max, huge respect. I can see Fernando-like situation for him going forward. If he goes to Merck, they're not on pace with no fault of his own, but he has a huge dilemma even for 25 and beyond. I'm surprised that he would even think about going to Mercedes, to be honest. Red Bull is not going to collapse overnight, that is for sure. And there's going to be enough momentum to continue well into 25. 26, different story, because it is a set of regulations, but there's no reason to think that even without Adrian, that Red Bull won't do at least as good a job as Mercedes, if not better. So why would Max leave all the people he knows and the team he knows to go to Mercedes and have George Russell in the other car? Or I don't know, I guess George Russell. I mean, are we thinking that they'll get rid of George and he'll be running with Antonelli? I don't know. I mean, Toto, I don't know what he's thinking at the moment. It's kind of weird, isn't it? I'll tell you what, if Adrian does go to Ferrari, that is a really big defeat for Toto Wolff, because here's the guy that's been locked into Red Bull for the last, whatever it is, 18 years. And here he is now available, in effect. He's leaving. And he's going to go to Ferrari. He's not going to go to the other big team, Mercedes. And if there's anybody in the world you want more than the best driver in the world, it is Adrian Newey. You want Adrian Newey. And in this occasion, if he does go to Ferrari, Toto Wolff is going to have to admit that he was defeated by Ferrari in that. And that's a big thing. It's a big thing for him not to have got Adrian Newey. If I was running Mercedes, which I'm not obviously, but if I was, and I would have been constantly trying to get Adrian anyway. And if there was even a sniff of him wanting to leave Red Bull, I would have been doing all I could to get him. I presume Toto has been doing that. And if I failed to do that and I lost out to Ferrari, I would really, really think twice about my position if it was me, because that's what you owe to everybody. You owe it to everybody, everything you've achieved, to be able to get somebody of the quality of Adrian as the icing on the cake, if you like. And if they haven't got that, and he's gone to Ferrari, that is a big thing for Mercedes to have to live with. Of course, they'll all sort of, when he'd be mentioned, will it? And they'll say, we didn't need him anyway. We got this great team. Of course, that's how they'll cover it. But I'm just telling you about reality rather than what you'll see in the social media. If back to this season, do you think the championship is already decided, or with Red Bull in turmoil and Ferrari's full upgrade in Imola, Charles can go on a winning run and challenge by the end of the year? Well, you are indeed a Charles fan, aren't you? I don't think they're going to go on a winning run and blow Red Bull away, no. I think they might get a little bit nearer, but then don't forget Red Bull are going to do some upgrades as well. So I don't imagine it's going to change that much. Anything can happen. In motor racing, as in a lot of sports, but particularly motor racing, because it's a mechanical sport and it's dangerous, anything can happen. So you never want to take anything for granted. And if you would say to Max, what do you think about the championship? He'd say, I don't even know how many points I've got. I'm not even thinking about the championship. All I'm thinking about is Miami and winning Miami. And that's the only way to go at this early stage of the season. Finally, from Wazeif, this is not a question, but my feeling on Lewis. I think this will turn out to be great for everyone. Even if Lewis is not on pace with Charles, he won't be too far behind after all. He's LM. Yeah, I mean, he's... Can I get a job at Ferrari next year being a gopher or truck driver or being Adrian Newey's translator or something? I mean, what a team to be with, Ferrari next year. Wow. Adrian, Charles and Lewis. I haven't really thought about it that much, but if it happens, if Adrian goes there, I want to be there. I want to work in the canteen. I want to sweep the floors. I want to do anything. It's just like, wow, what a team. And Lewis will definitely, if the car is a good car, and it's capable of winning races on a regularish basis, for sure Lewis will be winning. Maybe not as much as Charles over a season, maybe not as many points as Charles, but he'll be right pretty close to him, I think. I don't think you should discount Lewis from any of this. So, and yeah, I think, and you're saying, and knowing Charles, he'll make things quite easy and respectful for Lewis, as he did with Seb, and even more unlike what's happening at Merck. Thoughts? Yeah, I think right. I mean, Charles will be respectful. I don't think there's been, I think he's been very respectful of Carlos Sainz. I don't think they've been that close. I think they've been very competitive, haven't they? But there's no reason for them to be close anyway. Why should they be close? That's not what teammates are hard to do or be there for. So there you go. And you're saying, thank you, sir, for the first time I've dared to ask you questions, even if you can't answer them all. I can understand. It's always a pleased to listen to you, and long may it continue. Thank you very much. Have a great day. You have a great day too. This is a good moment, I think, to not only thank, as ever, my long-term association partners with Pitbox and with Jetcraft, who've been with me for quite a long time now. Great companies, and you can read about them in the description. But also to welcome on board a third associate partner now, OEM Exclusive. Great company, a great company that I need to get this absolutely right because I don't want to blow it. They supply a global customer base with OEM upgrades for exotic and high performance vehicles, including impossible to find parts for classic Ferraris. Pretty low profile, but they do an amazing job. And it's just, I think it's a great fit on my channel, if I may say so. And I welcome them on board, and thank you very much indeed, all involved at OEM, for your support of this channel. It's a great privilege to have that logo there. Let me see if I can, yeah, there you go, not bad. Good. LA Flame, what do you think of an unregulated race? Like, teams can do anything they want with front and rear aero, engine modes, cold fuel, etc. And you can explain other things they can do. Pleasure listening. Well, depends where you draw the line on the regulations. Are you saying that the design of the cars is unregulated? Although it's the current regulations, but once they get to the weekend, they can do whatever they like, whenever they want, and make changes. I don't know. I mean, all the regs we have, all the rules we have are in there to either for safety reasons, cost reasons, or considered to be good for the sport reasons. So let me think of some of the things you mentioned. Cold fuel. Now, I wouldn't be a fan of cold fuel. I always thought it was quite dodgy, really, freezing the fuel to get more into the tank. I'm just not really into all that stuff. I always thought, yeah, engine modes, I don't know. I like everybody being on the same engine mode all the time, just as I liked it when everyone was on the same set of tyres that lasted 3 Grand Prix, which used to be the cases in the 60s. Front and rear aero, I mean, they can adjust front flap. They can't adjust rear wing after part fermé. Would that be a good thing to be able to play with? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they do have DRS, so it's not really an issue, is it? Because, you know, there are 3 straights at Miami, 3 DRS zones, and 3 long. There's a very long straight. It's like 200 plus miles an hour, and it means that the circuit is quite low downforce anyway, relative to Japan and China, with 3 DRS zones. So, you know, rear wing settings, you know, they're not going to be that significant given the amount of time they're going to be running flat, aren't they? You know, with DRS open. So I don't know. It's a nice idea. I would prefer to go along the lines of, you can have your budget cap, but you basically design the car within these safety parameters within that budget cap, and you see what you come up with. That would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Maybe. Or maybe not even have a budget cap. Just give them safety parameters and they can come up with whatever they like in terms of exotic design. Alan C. at Peter Windsor. Without a D. Doesn't matter. Please, please, put the BBC back in its place. I've seen nothing but headline after headline without any proof saying Adrian is leaving because of Horner. Terrible reporting. Well, I'm not one to be able to do that, I'm afraid. And being in Spain, I'm absolutely, totally remote from all the UK media and press, which is a wonderful thing. So I don't know. What can I do? I can't say any more. It's just that as I said when we first said that he was leaving Red Bull, I think there is a little bit of an issue there, not because of what happened, but because of a bit of a breakdown in trust between the two. And that's, I think that probably did mean quite a lot to Adrian. And maybe in the background, he was also looking for an opportunity to either go to Ferrari or maybe stop and have a lot of fun doing other things. But I think it is connected, actually. But I mean, as for headline after headline in the BBC, I can't really comment on that because I haven't seen any, to be honest. Arnab does. Hello, Peter. Hope all's well. Formula One just posted a tribute of Senna, but they never put tributes to Jim Clark. This is so sad. Well, there you go. I've just been talking about Jim Clark at the beginning of this live stream, about Ian Scott Watson, who we said farewell to on Sunday in Scotland, without whom really Jim Clark wouldn't have had the career he had. He might have been a race driver, I guess. He might have found his way in some other way, but it was Ian's cars that he first drove. It was Ian's encouragement that spurred Jim on to going from hill climbs to races, and there was Ian then arranging all these drives, and it was Ian and John Webb that arranged for Jim Clark to have his first single-seater drive in that Gemini Formula Junior at Boxing Day Brands 59. So have no fear. On this channel, Jim Clark will never be forgotten. Indeed, on the contrary, I've just done, for anybody who's interested, I've just posted on my podcast channel, Short Corners, a podcast about Jim Clark. It's a two-part podcast. The first part is about Jimmy generically and my thoughts on him. And then I'm doing a very detailed description of the 65 British Grand Prix at Silverstone, which he won. Probably his greatest victory, arguably his greatest victory, let's put it that way, when he nursed the car with low oil pressure over the closing stages of the race, still to win by 3 seconds. And he did that by turning off the engine and coasting through the quick corners so there wouldn't be any problem for the oil surge, or the lack of it. So if you're a Clark fan, that is now on my podcast. You can download it and listen to it. And I'm starting more and more Jim Clark content, because 2025 is the anniversary of 1965. 60 years since Jim Clark achieved the impossible. As I said earlier in that picture of the golden helmet, I'll just bring it up again. Jim Clark, it was presented by Esso actually to Jimmy, this helmet. That is a golden helmet with sapphire and sapphire inlays and opals. And is it opals? I think. Anyway, it's gold plated and it's a wonderful thing. And it's to commemorate that double whammy of 65 when he won the Indy 500 and the Formula One World Championship in the same year, a feat that will never ever be repeated in my opinion. And if you think about it, Esso was the only common factor between his Formula One Lotus and the Indy Lotus, because the Indy Lotus was on Firestones, he's on Dunlops in the Formula One car. He had the Ford engine in the Indy car, Climax engine in the Formula One car, and so it goes on. Esso was the only common factor. And I hope, what are they called? ExxonMobil these days. I hope they realize that, and I hope they're planning something astronomically huge for 2025 to celebrate that, particularly as the Esso guys at the time obviously did take it very, very seriously, which is nice to see. So yeah, there we go. Living on the Edge, quite a simple message from Living on the Edge. It's just a series of thumbs, which is good. Thank you very much. And from Foon, we have, hello, Peter. I'm sure you heard the Newey announcement today. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to OBS as my background thing because I can't see if it's coming up correctly or not. If I stay on YouTube, it's just a technical thing. Here we go. So what have we got here? That's it. I heard the news. Do you think that's Newey leaving Red Bull? And it's interesting, isn't it? It's quite late. And there was somebody who was saying, oh, well, they didn't want to detract from the solemnity of May 1 being in memory of Ayrton, and that's why they delayed it. Equally, I suspect Christian was having a last gasp attempt to try to get Adrian to stay, as he did very well in the previous time, back in 2005, whenever it was, when Adrian was going to go to Red Bull from McLaren, when Bobby Rahal was at Red Bull, and Bobby did that deal, and Adrian and Bobby go back a long way, and they're big mates, and Ron put a stop to it at the last minute and so Adrian stayed. But then when Christian then went to Red Bull, he, with David Coulthard, got to say, persuaded Mateschitz that whatever it took, really, they needed to get Adrian Newey and they needed to make this deal stick. And they did, and they put that deal together. And it went on to be the most successful deal, if you like, in the history of Formula One, you could argue. So I guess on the back of that, Christian might have been thinking, I have one more go to try and get him to stay. But obviously I don't think it's worked, has it? Following on from my question, this is from Foon again. As someone who knows Adrian personally, where do you see his heart at the moment? Formula One retirement? If Formula One, when and where and why? As someone who has done it all, what is left? I would say his heart is in a Lotus 49B or something of that ilk, a very nice classic racing car, or maybe even a modern, McLaren type long distance car. He loves racing still. He's still a quick driver. I'm sure all his physical faculties are okay. He's probably pretty knackered from all the travel and all the pressure and all the work of Formula One. So he's probably, whatever he does, he's going to want to have a break. And he'll do some racing. He's doing Monaco Classic. He'll find all of that very relaxing and a lot of fun. But if he thinks, what do I want to do in the future? I don't know him that well, I got to say. So I'm the wrong person in terms of somebody close. But I would say it would be Ferrari. If it was all out of all the teams, it's the one that would be the most interest now. I would think he feels pretty good about Freddie Vasseur, who's low profile, doesn't talk too much, just gets on with it, and he's a real racer. He probably feels very good about Charles and Lewis as a combination. And he probably quite likes the idea of working in Italy and the Italians and Ferrari. So I would say that's where his heart is. As I say, I'd like to, if he goes there, I want a job there. I don't care what I do, really. I can cook the pasta in the restaurant at Cavallino. I'll do anything. It's such a great team all of a sudden, wouldn't it? Smith Jones, alias. Evening, Peter. Quick question. I hear Carlos is keen on trying out MotoGP. Could this be an option to fill in 25 until the Audi seat is available, if Audi agrees? I hope not. I really hope not, because I don't know much about MotoGP, but I think it's probably pretty dangerous, isn't it? And I just hope he doesn't, because he might hurt himself. I just hope he doesn't. That's all I can say. But I'm sure he'll do all right. And being a Spaniard, they love their motorbikes here, and they love all that. And his dad's mega talented rally driver, we all know. And I suppose motorbikes, MotoGP is about the one thing the Sainz family haven't yet conquered. So have a go. But I hope not. To me, it's not. I know from his point of view, there's this massive desire not to be in a Sauber next year because it's a midfield car and it's going to be so different from what he's used to. But I don't think, if I was running Carlos now, I'd be trying to persuade him not to be too fussed about that, because the only way is up with that team from here on in, really, especially if he goes there. You've got Hulkenberg joining as well, who'd be, he's good, isn't he? And then there's Audi. And it's a bit of a question mark, the whole Audi thing, how they'll do it, how well they'll do it. But you've got to assume they'll do a half reasonable job over a period of time. So you could say, look at it from a different approach, Carlos. You're growing organically with the team. Every time you get a point, it's a big thing for them. Every time you get near the top 6, it's a really big thing for them. When you make Q3, it's a big thing. Go and enjoy your life and enjoy getting to know everybody. That's what I'd be saying to him. And my only... I don't know. I just think I was a bit with the Nico Hulkenberg thing, leaving Haas at the end of the year, going to. I'm very pleased for him. Let's face it, this guy getting the pole in Brazil for Williams and then getting sacked, and now finally he's been driven for some factory teams, Renault and stuff. But and the best of the lot was Force India, obviously. But he certainly deserves a big chance, and they've obviously given him this drive on the performance of his driving in the Haas, so that's good news for him, and very pleased to see that. But for me, it's a bit early for Audi to be thinking about drivers when they haven't even got their whole technology sorted yet. They need to decide how they're going to do the car and get people working at weekends and get on with it as a proper racing team. And then they can start looking at drivers. I just, it's a bit of a distraction, I think. And if I was Carlos, that's what I would do. I don't think, but I understand, having said all of that, I quite understand that Carlos doesn't want to, he's in no rush because he can probably get that other Sauber Audi seat whenever he wants. He can delay it as long as he wants. But in the meantime, if there is an option potentially at Red Bull who are thinking without Adrian, we might want to increase the performance level across the two drivers and we need Carlos in the other car instead of Sergio, they might think that. Unlikely, but they might. And Mercedes might still do something. Unlikely again, but they might. So he's waiting for those two things, isn't he? Once those doors are completely closed, then that's the only option he's got. Unless he goes to MotoGP, and I hope he doesn't do that. Put it this way, I think being midfield in a Sauber would be better for Carlos than to be racing MotoGP. Sam Van Harden says, "Hi Peter, you've said that Red Bull is the biggest sweet spot. What exactly does this mean? Alex made it sound like it was the most difficult car I'd ever driven, or is that setup related?" I think Alex said driving with Max's setup, in other words, just making sure he had a good front end and not really worrying about what the rear does, was the most difficult car I'd ever driven, because Alex Albon is a bit of a rear end driver. He turns in quite late and he's waiting for the rear to load before he can get the power on the way he wants to do it. Very nice and supple, but that's how he drives, whereas Max drives, everything's related to the front end. So that's what he means by that. What I mean by saying sweet spot is that they have because they've got more, for any given wing setting, if you could compare the wing setting of a Red Bull with, say, a Ferrari or a Mercedes, for the same wing setting, Red Bull have more inherent downforce and more grip. And so all they need to do is take a little bit of wing off to get a little bit of a top speed advantage, and they've still got their grip level, and it's still probably better than anything at Ferrari and Mercedes. And what I mean by a sweet spot is that they've got room to maneuver when the tyres start to go away. If the balance isn't quite right, Max can do quite a lot with the car by use of the throttle, the steering and the brakes. Whereas in a Ferrari, not so much a Ferrari these days, or even McLaren, but let's say the Mercedes, everything is very much on a knife edge. And if they lose the front end, there's not much they can do with the rear to get the thing to balance itself. Everything's on the edge. They've had to take as much wing off as they can, and they're running the absolute minimum amount of downforce in order to be where they are on the straight. And on top of that, those cars have more propensity to bouncing the minute you start putting them lower to the ground for more downforce. So Red Bull just have more room to maneuver in setup than all the other teams, because Adrian's created a car and his team have created a car with much more efficient downforce. And that's why when you get to a sprint weekend and they've only got 1 hour to get the car set up, Red Bull are always going to be in good shape, unless they get it completely wrong, as they did in Brazil a couple of years ago. But that was a ride height thing based on not understanding what the track surface was going to be like. Here, at Miami, it's a very smooth surface. I think it was resurfaced last year, and it's prone to graining and the tyres going off because it's very, very smooth. And Pirelli are running the mid-range of their 3 compounds, so there won't be a massive amount of grip. Obviously, on that sort of track, the evolution will be incredible, and it'll pick up a lot of grip as the weekend progresses. But the time the teams are setting the cars up is when the circuit's got 0 grip, and so there's a lot of, that's when, I'm just going to put this chair up a little bit, sorry. There's a lot of sweet spot stuff that will come into play in that first session, and that's where Red Bull will be in very good shape, because no one will have a lot of grip, but they'll get a balance and they'll get a feel for where they're going better than anybody else, I think. And all that comes down to the aero efficiency of the car. Elliot Davidson, hi Peter. Which current drivers would go well on an oval? Any benefits of being a short corner driver? Love the work and short corner t-shirts. Short corner t-shirts, yeah, we're going to have to do that. We're just looking at the whole merch situation at the moment. My man is investigating whether we continue with the current people or whether we go to a new lot. And I think I'm not really involved in any of that, but I'm going to do some short corner merch. It's going to be good fun. In terms of short corner, it's interesting, Indy, isn't it? Because Nigel Mansell was immediately quick on ovals, and he did go in a little bit earlier than most of the guys against whom he was racing. Ari Leindijk, was really quick at that in that season, 93, 94. He would be going a little bit earlier than Ari, for example. So yeah, short corners do work for sure at Indy on ovals, no question about it. And it's about rotation again. And I tell you what, this is a perfect segue now, because I did actually ask Linus Lundqvist when we chatted about ovals and what Indies like to drive these days. It's part of the interview. So, with no more ado, this is the chat I had with Linus Lundqvist, who finished third in Alabama last weekend in the Chip Ganassi car. And I caught him, and he's still on the wave of euphoria from that P3. So enjoy.
Yeah.
Linus, great to talk to you. Great to see you again after all this time, and congratulations on that P3. I mean, from where we sit, you're adapting to the whole thing really quickly. I don't know what it feels like for you, what that P3's a big surprise, whether it's overdue. How do you feel in terms of dancing with the music at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again, Peter. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tricky because I went into the season not really knowing what the expectations were, but obviously hoping that we would be able to compete quite quickly for, top positions. And that is, at the end of the day, why I'm here and why I love motorsport, is to compete for wins. And obviously joining a team like Chip Ganassi Racing, you have the ability to fight for wins straight away. And I'm still not there yet, but it has taken me quite a while to get comfortable with everything and making sure that you can be competitive week in and week out, because all the drivers in the series, they're so good. So you have to bring your A game every single day. And this weekend everything kind of fell into place, and we were fast when we needed to. Strategy was good, and yeah, we walked away with a podium.
You talk about the sound of the driving, and for sure you're right there. Can you give us some explanation or background, though, as to why it can be apparently so up and down in terms of one weekend to the next? Is that all to do with how difficult it is to get the setup right, or is it some of it to do with the level of driving as well?
I think everything combined. Firstly, because it is a spec series, everything tends to be a little bit closer. But that also means that if you're able to find a tenth or two in a setup difference, you're not gaining 1 or 2 places. You might be getting 10 or 12 places. So it makes a big, big difference if you're able to roll out a little bit better. And as we tend to do, it's like, if you start in a good place, it's easier to improve from there. Rather, if you start, behind the 8 ball, it's even tougher to kind of get in front of it again. So I think that's kind of why you see these big swings. And it's not that you've lost half a second of performance. It's just that, oh, we've lost 2 tenths because, the setup wasn't right. Or maybe you missed a lap in qualifying and you go from, competing in the fast 6 to being dropped out in round 1.
Let's just go back a little bit to the day you learned that you'd got the Ganassi drive and the build up to that, and how the connection was made, and how you felt that night.
It was the craziest time of my life, I would say. Because this was in the mix of when I first got the call as well to do my first ever IndyCar race with Mayor Shank Racing in Nashville at the end of last year. And I did that weekend and did pretty well, even though I crashed in the race. Apparently I did well enough for some of the teams to start, making some phone calls and asking if I was available. And then, some discussion happened around that time. And then when the Ganassi offer was on the table, I realized that this is where I want to be. And I was able to sign the deal. And I still remember it very vividly because my parents were in town. And I took them to dinner, and I ordered in like a bottle of champagne. I didn't tell them anything because I had signed it like, I don't know, only an hour or two before. So I took in a bottle of champagne, and then I said, we're celebrating. And they thought, oh, we're celebrating because you did your first IndyCar race. I was just like, no. We've signed a big contract here. And I told them the whole thing. So it was special to kind of have them with me, because as much as it is my journey, it's their journey as well.
And Linus, as you're talking through that, I'm thinking, and you're a professional racing car driver, you're getting paid to race. this is a category where talent is rewarded. And obviously, there are lots of categories in Europe where you can make it if you're really quick, but you need a lot of, I don't know if it's luck or whatever it is, but it's much more difficult in Europe, isn't it? And you made the plunge after winning the British Formula 3 Championship, doing Euro Formula 3. You kind of ran up against a brick wall in terms of budget and everywhere else, where to go. And then you went to America, and now look at you being employed by a front-running team on merit. And that says a lot about IndyCar these days, I think.
Yeah, and it says a lot about, I think, the whole American ladder system, because without that, I would not be here today either. You know, I got the drive to do the FR Americas Championship in 2020, was able to find a little bit of budget to do that. But when I won that championship, I got a scholarship to do Indy Lights. And without that scholarship, I would never have done Indy Lights. And I did 2 years of that. And, you know, the second year that we won it, the scholarship helped me, you know, to fund some of the races that I did in IndyCar last year as well. So without that initiative, I don't think that I would have gotten the ride. And without getting to do those 3 races last year, I would not be in the position I am. So I think it just kind of proves that it works. I will not say that it's easy. It's still very, very hard. But I'm extremely thankful for what America has brought to me so far. And yeah, I'm loving life over here.
Linus, a lot of Europeans. I mean, there's been a lot of Europeans coming over to IndyCar and Indy Lights even over the last decade, but there's a lot there right now. And one of them, actually, I think you've got a bit of experience with from Europe, right? Teo Pourchaire.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to see Theo coming over here. Obviously one of many F2 drivers coming to the scene. I think it's awesome. And it's funny, I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet, but I actually coached him in 2019 when he was doing a day in the EFO car around Silverstone. So this was, you know, 5 years ago. But it is funny seeing, you know, these drivers that you've kind of known about, at least from Europe, and or might even worked with, coming over to the US now. So yeah, we're definitely creating a little bit of a European army coming over here.
And what was your report card like that day when you coached him?
I will say I remember because he did F4, and that was like one of his first days in the F3 car, and he impressed both me and the team like straight away. Like the high speed, I imagine, or I remember seeing him through Maggots and Beckett's like his first couple of laps, and it was damp as per usual around Silverstone, but there was no hesitation, and I was just like, okay, this kid can drive. It was you know, quite evident from lap one.
Talking about high speed, you got some ovals coming up. No, you're no stranger to ovals, obviously from Indy Light, but what are you thinking in your mind in terms of the Indy 500 and the big ovals coming up?
Super excited for that. Obviously, the Indianapolis 500 is the highlight of the year and something that you look forward to. But it's also probably one of the hardest things to do. We did have the open tests here a couple of weeks ago, and I did the ROP, the Rookie Orientation Program, last year, and I was able to go through it, no problem. But one thing that I did learn during the open test, it's fine when you're on your own, but then you put, you know, 10, 15 cars ahead of you, and oh my God, the car changes. All of a sudden, you know, you're pulling gears that you've never seen before. You're going with speeds that you've never been going before, and obviously the car behaves worse in the corners. So that's kind of where the focus is going to be, just making sure that we're comfortable in traffic. And I know that, you know, the team almost always have a very good car, so it's just going to be about bringing my confidence level up, so we're good to fight when it comes to race day.
And what is a lap of Indy like now on your own in terms of lifts, possible braking, how the car moves around? What is it like? How far ahead are you looking as well?
Yeah, when you're by yourself, it's easy flat depending on the downforce level. Obviously, you can strip the car of all downforce and it will be tricky. And the team keeps telling me it's because the days that we've done so far has been pretty cool. But then come qualifying day when it's, you know, 95 plus degrees and it's, you know, they turn up the boost or you're going actually faster, they said that's when it's tough to be flat even on your own. But in the race, like, you can't just look on the car ahead. You need to be looking, you know, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 cars ahead to see if there's a checkup, because you don't want to just be reacting to the driver ahead, because then you're going to be the one being caught out. So you always want to think, you know, 4 or 5 drivers ahead and see what they're doing and see if you can benefit from it. So that's a big part of the learning curve for me right now.
The other thing about Indy is that you can qualify 28th at Indy and still win the 500, right? So in that
Mhm.
sense, how important is qualifying for you? How much do you think about qualifying as distinct from the race?
I mean, majority of the focus goes into the race just because, like you said, you can basically start from last and you can still win that race. But like in any race, it definitely helps by starting up front. So you want to qualify as well as possible, but the majority of the focus goes into the race. And also because it is so much tougher, at least from a rookie driver's point of view, it's a complete different challenge. I thought I kind of knew what oval racing was about until they sent me out in traffic during one of the open days. And I said, okay, well, I'm back to square one because I got a lot of work to do here.
What's life like for you? You live in Indianapolis, I guess, Ganassia based there.
I'm in north of Indy, so a little place called Carmel. It's where a lot of drivers are based, actually. So I'm only 10, 15 minutes away from the shop.
I think that's where Zach Brown started life as well, is it not?
Yeah, I think so too. And even in the same apartment complex that I'm in, I think there are like 10, 15 drivers from, IndyCar, Indy Lights, and all the other junior series. So it's quite funny when you walk around.
Well, I hate to think what you guys get up to at night. A lot of Scandinavians there too, right?
Yeah, a lot of Scandinavians, and yeah, we'll not talk about the nightly adventures that goes on in this apartment complex, but it's good. I go to a gym here nearby as well called PitFit, that Dixon and a couple of other drivers go to as well. So it's a nice little community that we have here.
What do you drive on the road?
I drive an Acura MDX. It's one of the many privileges, I will say, as an IndyCar driver, is that you get a road car from your engine manufacturer. So that was probably one of the most fun weeks that I had last year when we did sign the contract with Ganassi. I also got sent links then to Honda or Acura, and they said spec out the car you want. And I've never had like a brand new car before, so I spent a week trying all different specs and colors and seeing what I want. So I got it delivered here at the beginning of this year, and it was cool. It's my first time having like a proper car.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on that first podium, Linus. What was it like being up there? Good podium to be on to us, some good guys next to you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are guys that, you've looked up for so many, many years. Both Scott and obviously Power as well. He's a legend in the sport. So it was cool to share it with them. And honestly, I'm still not sure that I'm really have processed the whole thing because it was a crazy race as well. We started in 19th and worked our way through. First half was basically just fuel saving, and then the second half was like try to pass as many cars as you can. And then they came on the radio with like 10 to go and said, "Oh, you're P3." I'm like, "Okay, well, thanks for making me nervous." And then yeah, it was special again because my family was there. So when I jumped
Oh,
out of the
wow.
car and they were there, it was a big moment. I'm not gonna lie, it was almost a little bit emotional. But a moment that you'll remember forever.
And Felix was P4, right?
Yeah, Felix was P4. He was, I think, one of the first one to come and congratulate me as well.
Really good. Brilliant. I'm so happy for you. And as I say, I can't help going back to how it all started for you and thinking of guys like Rob Wilson and Boyo and all that was good stuff. If you look back now, I guess you could say that was the right grounding on which to launch your career the way it's turned out.
Without a doubt, I would not be here today with either of those two people. I would honestly say they very much laid the foundation of they built the foundation of the racing driver that I am today. And I'm very, very proud of that. And, I still keep in touch. And, I saw Boy only a couple of months ago. I was actually back in the UK to do a couple of days to warm up for the IndyCar season. So we'll still keep in touch, but they very much laid, the groundwork of the driver that I am today.
And tell me, do the Rob Wilson principles of flat car, little turn, big turn, do they apply to IndyCar?
They 110% apply to IndyCar. You have no idea. Like I drive around still thinking about that in my head. I hear Rob's voice in the back of my head saying flat car, and think about this, think about that. And it definitely works. Obviously, there are tricks to it and ways to
Yeah.
drive around it, but the fundamentals that he teaches you, like it applies to no matter what car I've been in so far.
How's it in Sweden now when you go back? How did the
Yeah,
people
it's
recognize you
good.
in the street? Yeah, what's going? They must love IndyCar because they got so many drivers out there that have done so well. going back to the Kenny
Yeah,
Brack days.
yeah, absolutely. You know, the interest in motorsport and especially for IndyCar has, you know, dramatically increased, especially since Felix and Marcus joined. So happy to be able to kind of join that little scene and hopefully bring even more attention to it. But it's good. I don't get to go back as often as I would like to, maybe only once or twice a year, but every time I go back, it's nice. See friends and family again, obviously people you miss, but it's I'm extremely thankful and happy about the life that I'm having here in the US so far. I am very much living my dream. Like you said, you know, I'm being a paid racing driver. That's at the end of the day all that you want.
Linus, a great pleasure to talk to you. Great pleasure to share a little bit of your life right now. And I'm sure you're going to go on to bigger and better things. Best of luck for those. But in the meantime, congratulations on everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Well, there we go. Linus Lundqvist. And that tied in quite well, I think, with that question about short corner drivers around ovals. And wasn't it amazing to hear him talk about having coached Théo Pourchaire? Wow. I think that means two things. Either time passes very quickly or it's a very small world. Maybe it means both. I don't know. Anyway, so there's that one. Thank you for that question. Hope that was a very impressive segue that you all enjoyed. Oh, it's on this one, YouTube, it's a delay here. It's still showing that it's still going, but it's not, I think. Anyway, here we go. Back to questions. When you were at Williams, did you ever have to test out an F1 video game? Don't remember that at all, actually. I was trying to remember what the video game situation was. I think Bernie was doing the first of the Sony PlayStation deals, but I guess it must have been 91, 92, I guess. I can't imagine Nigel and Ricardo were very interested in it, and I don't think anybody else was either, really, from what I can remember. But they were. I was around that time, I think. I remember the first deal was taking place at that point. I'm not sure Frank was that interested in it either. I don't think any of us really knew what it was and where it was all going. Bernie did. He was the man of the internet, of course. Yeah, right. But anyway, there we go. Hi, Peter. It's 30 years to the day that we lost arguably the greatest driver of the era, Ayrton Senna. Can you, sorry, I just need to get this. Why am I not being able to get this question up? Here we go. That's better. Can you recount your experience of that weekend and the horror upon horror of events that round? I wasn't actually there that weekend. I just got back from a trip to America because I was working on an IndyCar project at the time. But I watched it all live on Eurosport, who kept the cameras just trained on his car after the accident, and it was pretty obvious that it was very, very bad. And the first thing I did was ring Ginny, Frank's wife, Ginny Williams, and say, "Are you okay?" I remember saying, "Are you okay, Ginny? Because this doesn't look good for Ayrton." And she said, "Well, I've just spoken to Frank," and she said he's fine. He got a bump on the head, bit of a knock on the arm, but he's fine. I said, "Oh, okay, good. Well, that's good news." Of course, that's what a lot of them were told before the race restarted. Bernie was really keen to get that race restarted. Sid Watkins was obviously tending Ayrton, and a lot of the people on the grid restarted that race not knowing that how bad Ayrton's injuries were. And I'm still to this day fairly shocked that Damon Hill was allowed to restart, because we know now that the cause was low tire pressures and the ridiculously slow safety car and all the things that led up to that. The tire pressures and the temperatures dropped and he bottomed out. But there was no way of knowing at that point exactly what had happened. And had it been a mechanical failure, you'd never want to run that second car. And yet they did. I'm always amazed by that, and amazed by Damon just getting on with it. I know he left quite a lot of margin that day afterwards, as he would, but through Tamburello particularly. But it was a very, very strange situation. I remember talking to Robbie Tyres, one of the Williams mechanics who was there in my era in 91, 92, now at McLaren, I think, or went to McLaren. And he was saying, oh, yeah, we were on the grid. We were told that Ayrton was fine. And that's why we got on with it and got Damon going. So that was my experience of it. I've done a lot of interviews and a lot of research into that whole weekend. And the other thing that staggers me is that Max Angelelli, the very, very talented Formula 3 sports car driver, Italian, was the driver offered the safety car for the weekend to be the safety car driver. And he drove this ridiculously slow Opel around on the Thursday just to see what it was like. And after 2 or 3 laps said to Charlie Whiting, this car is a joke. It's a road car, road tyres, brakes are hopeless, everything's hopeless on it. If we have to do any sort of run using this car, it'll be impossible. And I think the answer was 2 things. One, well, the likelihood of ever it being used is 1,000,000,000 to 1 because it's just there for show, really. And 2, we're not going to change it because it was supplied by a local dealer and Bernie did a deal. But Max, of his own volition, went off to the Porsche Super Cup paddock and talked to Jos Capito, who was running the Porsche program at that point. It later went to Williams, as you know. And he said to him, have you by any chance got a car that I could possibly borrow for the rest of the weekend because I'm the safety car driver? And Jos said, yeah, the celebrity car's not being used. It was a proper Porsche Carrera Cup car with roll bar, road race tyres and everything else. So Max said, wow, and just drove it down to the pit lane into the FIA garage, took the stickers off the Opel and put them on the Porsche and felt a lot better about life as a result. But then Bernie came along and saw the Porsche with all the stickers and said, what's that all about? And get them off, put them back on the Opel. We're not going to run that Porsche, we're running the Opel. And so they had to go back to the Opel. And when the first corner, when the first start line accident happened, which was the thing that triggered the Ayrton accident really, because that's why, well, you'll see why. When the start line accident happened, JJ Leto and Pedro Lamy shunted, and there were a few injuries in the grandstand, so it was quite a big thing. And by normal standards and the rules at that point enabled the race to be stopped immediately, the track to be cleared, anybody injured to be catered to, and then the race to be restarted. And that's what normally would have happened. But because there was an obsession about using a safety car, because Nigel Mansell had gone to Indianapolis and gone very well, and TV ratings were starting to move a little bit. A lot of people were watching ITV's coverage of IndyCar in the UK, and Formula One was going downhill a little bit. And so one of the solutions was, well, we've got to have a safety car too, because in America they just put out the safety car or the pace car whenever it's boring, and that brings the race together, and we'll do the same. Of course, that wasn't the reason. It was Nigel, A, and B, what Formula One came up with was not the same solution, because those cars at that time, subject to Bernie's 1993 Hockenheim agreement changes, banning everything electronic on the car, were basically skateboards. And they were rock hard in terms of suspension. And if you hit a bump, it just went up. So you had to be, the front lifted. So you had to be very careful on ride heights. But the lower you ran, the more grip you had. And Ayrton was convinced, of course, that Michael's Benetton was illegal running traction control. So he was absolutely on the limit of the Williams, trying to get it as low as possible to get as much downforce as he could. But he was bottoming out through Tamburello, and he did say to Damon, be very careful through that. It's very, very bumpy, and the front can get away from you. And when that accident happened, Max and Charlie Whiting would buy this Opel safety car, Cadet or whatever it was, and Max had his overalls rolled down around his waist. They didn't have helmets on, because they just never imagined that they would be deployed. That it was the absolute assumption was that the race would be stopped. And they're suddenly told to get in the car and lead the field around as a safety car. And within a lap, Ayrton was leading the race, pulling up alongside Max, eyes as big as eggs, go faster. I'm losing my tire pressures and my temperatures. And that was absolutely critical to the ride height of the car and the bumps and everything. And I think they did 5 laps or something, and by which time the tires were absolutely beyond any help at all. The car was just bottoming out, and Ayrton was leading the field on the flying lap and presumably went flat through Tamburello because he was so concerned about Michael and getting a run on him into Tosa, and the front went up, and that was it. That's all the information that I've in a nutshell, that I've accumulated over the years on that accident. A lot of other things as well, but they're the key elements. This is from JB. Hi, Peter. Following you since the '02 F1 digital era. Oh, wow. Okay. I enjoyed that. Doing that with Damon Hill and Matt Lorenzo out of Biggin Hill. Well, we were at the races, but the whole thing was produced in Biggin Hill. It was really good. We were on the cutting edge of digital interactive TV technology. Always love your insights. When did you meet Ayrton for the first time, and your thoughts, of course, for the Miami Grand Prix this weekend? Thanks for the question. I met Ayrton for the first time through my very good friend Keith Sutton, Sutton Images. He and his brother Mark Mark is the man now. He's at all the races, still working incredibly hard. Keith has a little bit of an easier life, as he would deserve to after all these years. Great photographer anyway. And when Ayrton came over from Brazil to do Formula Ford, he befriended Keith. And presumably at a test or somewhere they would have met. And Keith was the sort of de facto PR man for Ayrton. And I was sports editor of Autocar magazine at the time. And every Monday, literally every Monday, I get a brown envelope with nice 9x6 black and white photographs of Ayrton's race in Formula Ford. And after about 2 weeks of receiving these and reading Keith's little thing, I thought, wow, I'm going to have to meet this guy. So I went to a race and met him in Formula Ford. Saw him regularly racing Ford 2000 and then Formula 3. Got to know him pretty well, Formula 3, and then beginning of his Formula 1 career. Then I went to Williams, so we were not so close then, but certainly when in '84 when he was at Tolman, I remember going to dinner with him in Portugal at his villa, having dinner with a big group of people with him that weekend. And not at the race, just another race and just another weekend. And going to visit him in his little house in, I think it was Reading. Remember? Yeah, Reading, I think it was. It might have been Maidenhead, one of those sort of little townhouse things. And we had dinner after he won Macau, Formula 3 as well. So yeah, one of my abiding memories of Ayrton, actually. It must have been going to Spa. And it was probably 85 probably. And we both rented Alpha Sud TIs at Brussels Airport, and we both left at the same time. And I thought, wow, there's Ayrton in the other car, I gotta follow him. So I was following him out of the car park, and as we got onto the ramp to go onto the motorway to lead, down towards Liège and all that stuff, we were side by side on the ramp, and I thought, right now I'm gonna see, it's a race. And we were in, I don't know, third gear, and I just floored it, and Ayrton floored it, and he just pulled away. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, what is this? What is the magic this guy's got that even in Alpha Sud TI, that we're both flooring it, third, fourth, I'm not sure, I think I had 5 gears. He's just pulling away from me. Why? How? I guess he's a little bit lighter, I guess, would be the main explanation. It was quite funny. We had a good laugh about that afterwards. But we had a lot of chats to him about his driving, and I did a couple of races at Macau, and the first time I went there, again that was '84, he would have been doing this. I asked him to talk me through a lap of Macau, and he did. He just went through it with every detail. Oh no, manhole cover here, but there is about 2 or 3 centimeters between the manhole and the guardrail, and you must put your front wheel this there. Everything was totally precise, and he really helped me. I mean, I finished second in that race, and it's a bit like Linus saying, "Oh, I could hear Rob Wilson telling me to flat car, little turn, big turn." I could hear Ayrton saying, "No, Peter, get the wheel over there." So yeah, he was a good guy. He was a really good guy, funny guy, but quite, very selfish, as all good racing drivers are. I mean, Nigel was selfish in some respect as well, and very on the edge. I mean, I remember when the British Formula 3 Championship was in the balance at Thruxton last round. I guess it was Brundle, was the other guy, and he got something in the radiator, and so he just undid his belts and just leaned forward and pulled it out of the side pod, the radiator. Kept going, no way he'd get the belts tight again. There you go, that was Ayrton. And a final question, do you think Ayrton would be the dominating personality of the current drivers if he were driving today? You got no at the end of that. I'm not saying no to that. I just think there would be so much respect for Ayrton if he was driving for today that everyone would be saying, oh, okay, oh, whatever you say, Ayrton. It would be a bit like that, wouldn't it? I mean, not all of the young guys today say my hero was Ayrton. Of course, some of them say my hero was Lewis or Fernando because they're really young. But anyone who's been around, Lewis, for example, would say, wow, Ayrton Senna, yeah. Whatever he thinks, I agree with him. I'm pretty sure that would be the case, wouldn't it? iRacing Aussie, g'day mate. Eugene Hilloff, I love the thumbnail. The boys look great in Miami blue. Well, they do, don't they? I love blue anyway as a colour. I had I'd like to say I got a blue Lotus Elan, but I don't. I got a blue Lotus Elan model. It's about this big, nice one. But I did have a light blue Boxster. I wonder if I've still got that thing up there. I did have a light blue Porsche Boxster that I designed I got the blue exactly right, this light blue. And I parked it in Portobello Road one Saturday to buy something, I don't know, light or something. And it's quite a funky part of town with quite a lot of fashion shops there. And when I got back, there was a note under the windscreen wiper and it said, I love your car, ! Paul Smith. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I've still got that note. That's what I was looking for. I've got that note somewhere up there, actually. And it is genuinely Paul Smith. It's exactly the same as his signature on the clothes. So I was pleased with that. Yeah, light blue is a great colour, and I'm sure the Ferrari's going to look very cool this weekend, as will the guys. Lagrangian density. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, you know a lot more than I. Lagrangian density. About everything, so I'm a bit nervous about your question. Been a while, hope you and yours are well, Peter. Just want to drop your line and say thank you for motivating me to pick up Mark Donohue's The Unfair Advantage. Brilliant read. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad it was an easy comment to respond, because yeah, Mark's book is totally a great read. Anybody who hasn't read it, please do so. The Unfair Advantage. Mark goes through his life and his career almost car by car. But when you get to the Porsche bit, it just makes you wish you'd been around at all the stuff he was doing. It's brilliant. So, Lucas Noxia. Hey, Peter, where do you see the future for Adrian? Eddie Jordan, his manager, seems to suggest that he wants to retire and sail the world in his new sailboat while he still can. He deserves it, surely. Now, hang on. We need to get something straight here. I think Eddie and Adrian are big mates because they live in Cape Town. They've got houses in Cape Town. They do all that stuff. Manager? I think you need to be a little bit, okay, Eddie, yeah, right, okay. I think there's another guy, and I won't mention his name, but I do know him very well, and he's very close to Adrian. And if I would say if anybody is Adrian's manager, it's this guy. And but he's very low key, so I'm not going to mention his name now. But you might know about whom I'm speaking. But yeah, Eddie's I'm sure out there giving him some good advice. Yeah, whatever. Arzane Martins, hi Peter. With this Newey stuff, a lot of people minimise his output on RB20 and 19, saying it's more Pierre Wache and Enrique Balbo. Well, a lot of people will, won't they? Because that's what always happens. It's a bit like new team principals joining a Formula One team and always saying it's going to take 50 years to get this thing to turn around. Or whenever a team is slow, they always say, oh, well, we expect it to be slow here. And whenever a key person leaves, they always say, oh, yeah, well, we got great people. We won't feel his loss. It's always the way. But, of course, Adrian Newey is irreplaceable, and he's absolutely brilliant. So don't listen to any of that stuff. BBWA, Valtteri back to Merck. Well, that would be nice. I have mentioned that he would be great just to go back, even if it's for a year. Maybe his last year in Formula One. I got a lot of time for Valtteri. I think he's a good bloke. I like the way he's reinvented himself, and I like his low-key demeanour and his professionalism. And I thought he did a good job in China, actually. M.A. Khan, Newey was asked to compare Max with other drivers he worked with, in particular Senna. He said Max's style reminded him most of Mansell, not Senna. Do you agree? He felt Mika was closer to Senna. Yep, because Nigel is a short corner driver, as is Max. Ayrton never was. He was a long corner driver, about the best that ever lived. And yeah, he would say Mika because there's another longer corner driver as well. Mika would definitely be in that sphere of longer corner drivers. I totally agree with everything Adrian said there. No surprise there, of course. And Anders Dunkel. Hi, Peter. Is there any chance of Adrian going back to Williams to close the circle? Potentially Williams could give Adrian a stake in the team they refused to do years ago. I just can't see that happening, Anders. I just can't see how Adrian would want to go back to Williams and even having a stake in the team. Even if they gave him the complete team, I can't imagine he'd want to go back there, to be honest. And I think they need him a lot more than he needs them, to quote Formula One as the way they describe Andretti. So, no, I think is the answer there. And it's not closing the circle, really, because it's not the same Williams team, is it? It's not the Williams team that I used to know and love in the Adrian, Patrick Head days, Frank days, Sheridan Finn days, the Nigel Mansell days. You know, they were great. That was a real Williams team. This is a very different team. I'm not going to be too critical of it because these people bought it and they're doing what they are, but it doesn't seem to have the same, dare I say, character. Anyway, let's move on. AK, hi Peter. With Max now probably moving to Merck, is he? Will Carlos get a shot at the Red Bull soon? Well, absolutely. If Max goes to Merck, absolutely Carlos will be going to Red Bull. But why would... maybe I'm slow here, but why would Max go to Merck? What would Merck have that Red Bull don't have? Neither of them have got Adrian Newey anymore. At least Red Bull have got the momentum of Adrian Newey, and they've obviously got a really good setup there, which works incredibly well, which Adrian created. Mercedes is a mess, basically, and they may offer him more money, but Max doesn't. He's not going to go there because he's got another 50 million from Merck, is he? He's going to go to the team that's going to give him the best chance of winning races. So I don't know. You know, Max might go there if they offer him a 50-year deal at $3 billion a year and unbelievable extras, bolt-on extras. Maybe he would, but I just can't see it. I'd be shocked if he does that. But if he does, I'm ready to be shocked. I've been shocked a million times in the last 4 or 5 years with various decisions that have been taken or made. I can't predict anything anymore, it seems. But to me, it would be, if I was Max, I just cannot imagine why I'd want to leave Red Bull, even without Adrian, to go to Mercedes. Why? Unless Adrian was going to Mercedes, obviously, but I don't think he is. He's going to, if he does anything, he's going to go to Ferrari. So I think. But if he goes to Mercedes, obviously. Good evening, Peter. A moment of silence for Senna, 5194. Well, yeah, not about silence, but we certainly talked about him a lot at the opening of the show and how much he's missed and how much we all miss him and what a star he was, what a great guy he was as well, and what a talent he was. But thank you for saying that. Claudio Roberto, super chat. Thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Windsor. What happened to Schumacher at Donington 93? Why couldn't he perform in that iconic race? I don't know. I wasn't there, actually. Funnily enough, I was doing my indie thing. I mean, Ayrton just blew everybody away, didn't he? He just had this amazing opening lap, and everybody else was struggling with grip. And I have to go back and look. I mean, I can't remember, to be honest. He must have had some sort of issue because, as we know, he's pretty good in the wet, Michael. And maybe he had something go wrong with the car. But I'm afraid I have to put my hand up and say, I have no idea. NC Paddock F1 super chat. Rest in peace, Ayrton and Roland. That weekend should never have carried on. Ruben's crash was one thing, but Roland's death should have been cancelled. Should have cancelled the weekend. Commitments be damned. Yeah, you know, Formula One was very different in that Bernie Max, well, that Bernie era. It was Max too, wasn't it? Just from the Formula One that we knew before and the Formula One we know now, and they were writing the rules at any stage. And you know, it's difficult to imagine now, but Bernie. And I'm not saying this to be critical or indeed to wind anybody up, but Bernie was a businessman and he genuinely knew that accidents and crashes would be good for business and the race would go on. Bernie would put a race on regardless because of TV commitments, and I don't think it would have entered his head not to have had that Grand Prix, and that's the reason that everyone in the paddock was told that he was okay to make sure there was a race. And then he got everybody out. That's why he had Sid in the helicopter, so that there was no legal issue at the track, and everybody got out that night. That was another thing Bernie was thinking about. Fast thinker, businessman doing his job. You got to say, and these days, absolutely, I'm sure there would have been completely different reaction to everything that happened. But you put it in the context of 20 years before that, and racing did go on. The race went on with the car on fire on the track. So things have changed a lot, obviously, luckily, happily, in more recent times. I don't think he's probably being nice to Eddie there. His mate having a laugh about it over a beer. As I say, they're mates from Cape Town, and Eddie would be quite good at saying, if Adrian said, well, look, Ferrari, I want to go to Ferrari, I'm pretty keen to go there, but they're only offering me 200 million. I thought I'd get 300, Eddie. How do you think I should approach it? And Eddie would be quite, this is what you got to do. Tell him that. Tell him you're not driving. Tell him you're not going to do anything for him. Not going to do anything. Let me go and talk to him. He'd be quite good at that. But believe me, the guy who really runs Adrian Newey, runs him, who is the closest confidant of Adrian Newey, is not Eddie Jordan, in my opinion. M.A. Khan, truly, Fizzy Keller and Ralph all had a bigger qualifying advantage over Button as teammates than Alonso and Lewis. How is this possible? Truly had the biggest advantage. Was his one-lap speed underrated? Yeah, I think Jarno was very underrated by a lot of people for most of his career. He was very good. I mean, he wasn't very good at handling understeer and playing with the variables too much, but he was really good short corner driver, incredibly supple movements, very, very smooth, but not very aggressive with the car. And if he did get graining or understeer, he would kind of live with it and try to, as did Ralph actually. He'd just sort of try to left foot brake a bit more to cure the problem. And reality was, by doing that, he was just slowing down the car to get through the problem, as distinct from balancing the car at a higher speed. And that's what quite a lot of people did in that era when left foot braking came in. Fitzy absolutely blitzed Jenson Button at Renault, didn't he? I don't think Jenson was very comfortable in that car, by which I mean physically comfortable in the cockpit. So I think that probably needs to be brought into account. But also I've always said about Jenson that he on the contrary has incredible feel for left foot braking and overlap and lack of overlap, and never braking too much against throttle, and always having a perfect use of the two pedals. Really good in that area, and very, very good in a well-balanced car. Very good. Not massively short corners, but I would say Lando Norris-y sort of genre, that sort of driver, very similar, but not very good. His weakest spot was definitely the back end of the car and crosswinds and things like that, which is one of the reasons, in my opinion, he never really went well at Silverstone. I mean, that's another interesting thing about Jenson. As good as he was at circuits like Spa, he was never good at circuits like Silverstone, crosswind. So, or Turn 9 Barcelona, again, Jenson would often have moments there. And when he had a great back end, as in 09, obviously, he was great. He was better than Rubens. He had all that feel and touch. He was brilliant. So, in those comparisons that you've got, Fizzy Keller and Ralph, the car wasn't great. And that's where Jenson was not able to rise, I think, because they had all those other things coming into play, and it wasn't playing to his strengths. But when he got to McLaren, he had a very good car with a big sweet spot, and that's when it was playing to his strengths, and he was good. He was always very good. Formula Ford, he was very good. Karting, he was brilliant, and McLaren gave him everything he needed to be able to show that talent. But in the lesser cars, it was much more difficult. Rolf Svensson says, coverall from the old movie GP. Yeah, well, I used to love that movie. Still do. Still watch it periodically on a flight. It's great. The music, Maurice Jarre. I didn't realise Yves Montand was actually quite a good singer. It's a sort of saloon, no, what's the word? One of those sort of matinee singer. He was a matinee idol, but he was also a sort of saloon bar singer, French style, and he had quite a big following as a singer, let alone as an actor. And he was good. It's all good. Brian Bedford and the whole thing. Oh, Francois Hardy, Jessica Walter. Don't get me started. What an awesome time to go live. Well, thank you very much, Tiger. I mean, I've been playing around a bit with the times, haven't I? This is kind of coinciding with my son and the family being out watching the latest Garfield movie, as you would. It's a public holiday in Spain today. Incredibly, not only is it a public holiday in Spain today, but Jack's got 2 days off tomorrow as well, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, the rest of the world eat their heart out when it comes to 12-year-olds. I still remember where I was in 1994. Yeah, I'm sure we all do. I remember where I was in 1968, April the 7th, well, April the 8th, actually, when I heard the news in Australia about Jim Clark. Monday morning, I was very early. I used to get the 7 o'clock ferry from Manly across the harbour to Circular Quay. So I'd be having breakfast about 6:15 and then leaving at 6:30, walking to Manly Wharf. And it was on the news. There you go, 6 o'clock news. Scottish racing driver Jim Clark was killed yesterday in the race in West Germany, Hockenheim, West Germany. I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. What was he doing in West Germany? Jim Clark, it's not possible. And you felt the same about Ayrton. And, well, any loss, we always feel, how can it happen? How could it have happened? Michael Lawless, when you were working on the US team project, USF1, were you planning on being team principal? Would you want to be one? Yeah, we hadn't got round to defining titles at that point, but I was pretty much, with Ken Anderson, pretty much running it. Yeah, and I would love to. I still would love to have an opportunity to run a race team like that. Any race, a Formula One team. Okay, be blunt, a Formula One team. I think I could still do quite a good job. But if I didn't think that, I wouldn't be here now, occasionally offering an opinion about things, because obviously, I like to think that I've been around long enough to kind of have a bit of an idea of what's going on. So, yes is the answer, and I'd love to do it. And what do I love? More than anything in the world, I love the concept of giving young drivers an opportunity to race and to get the best from them. And then beyond that, mechanics, truckies, everybody else. I love mixing and matching people and getting the best from them. And I had an opportunity to do that at Ferrari when I was there in 1990. And that was great. We had a really good team by the end of that in the way we built the Formula One cars. And then 91, 92 at Williams as race team manager. So I still love that whole thing. And occasionally I work with a team of people, whether we're making a film, whether we're doing something, a project. And I always love that business of getting people together and getting the best from them. Tiger says, sound is good. Well, that's good to know. David is the name of the questioner. Is there a news blackout about Andretti Grand Prix? No. Well, I said in the last live stream that I'm hearing rumblings, and I can't really report from where they come, that they might well still be there in 26. I think there's still quite a lot of hope that there will be some sort of concession, and they will be there in 26. We'll see. If not, then soon after 26. Andel Pierre, I started watching Formula One the year after Senna died. I never experienced his greatness in real time. Yeah, he was great. But Nigel took the race to him, Prost took the race to him, and Nelson Piquet was there as well. And if you think about those four, that was a golden era of Formula One. It wasn't just Ayrton Senna dominating. It was a golden era of Formula One, of four titans in certainly 86, 87, unbelievably quick turbo cars with very little downforce, just wings, front and rear, and literally, wheel spin in every gear. I remember Ross Cheever, very talented driver as well. And this was under the heading of, PW trying to get his young talent in there. I persuaded Frank to let Ross do a test for us in 85 when Goodyear wanted us to run the FW10 Honda over a photocell which they mounted at Abingdon Airport, Airstrip, which we had rented for the day. And they needed this car to be driven very precisely at very specific speeds, right up to top speed, over this photocell in the wet and the dry, to see what the tread pattern was doing and to measure things, all the rest of it. And I suggested Ross, and Ross got the job. And I was talking to Dickie about this the other day, Dickie Stamford, and he remembers it well too. And he said when Ross is getting in the car, this is the FW10 Honda, and Ross is getting in the car, and Dick says, "Be careful, Ross, because on this surface you'll probably find a little wheel spin in every gear." And Ross says, nah, not passable, man. And then, of course, it did wheel spin in every gear, and he came in with a smile on his face. And yeah, there you go. Not quite sure what that story was related to, but there you go. Apo Papava. Hi, Peter. If Newey stays with Formula One, I see only one option, Ferrari. I don't think he's Aston, because with Lance there, chances for championship is limited, and Merck, too rigid organisational structure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he would even go that far. He'd probably think, if I had to sort of put words in his mouth, which I shouldn't do really. I'm just trying to get centred here between our logos. If I had to put words in his mouth, I would say the Stroll's not his style really. Mercedes, Toto, Freddie Vasseur, racer, as proved by what he does. Doesn't talk very much, gets on with it. That's what I think. It would keep it as simple as that. Of course, now he would probably think, he'd probably see the Lance thing as a bit of a challenge, you know. If I go there and Lance wins a race, mega. Captain Nut says, ever since the rumour of him leaving started, I've said he's going to Ferrari, and I'm sticking by that. Okay, good. A friend of mine said, you heard it from me first, he's going to go to Ferrari. And I said, you first, after 100 million other people have already said that. Captain Nut again says, I'm not a fan of Lewis, but to see him in a newly designed Ferrari would be phenomenal. Monaco winner is asking me, do you fly private with Jetcraft or do you fly commercial? Well, I often fly privately. Yeah, right. I have flown privately, and I have flown in Jetcraft owned aircraft. And what, of course, maybe a lot of people don't realize is that all these other companies like Wheels Up, for example, which a lot of the golfers use, where you rent time on a plane. A lot of the drivers do it as well. You rent time on a Lear or whatever it is. 99% of all those aircraft that you rent time on are all owned by Jetcraft, but then leased then to these companies that do these lease deals. But Jetcraft is the main hub of all of that, and it's a great company in that respect. They've been around a long time, since the late 60s, based in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and good people, really good people, and classically interesting people with a feel for life. Like more people, I'm lucky enough to be associated with. Pitbox the same with Ollie and the team he's got there and the software he's producing. And if anybody's even thinking of doing track days, or you do racing at club level, have a look at the Pitbox system for putting all the information together. They've done a really good job. All credit to them. And as for OEM Exclusive, just low profile, and they thrive on being given incredibly difficult challenges to find a specific type of mirror or some sort of fence that goes on the side of the car that's only 2 millimeters high, but it was there in 1964. They've got to find the same one. That's what OEM Exclusive do. Very, very good company as well. Love them. Likumri Changkiri says, hey, Mr. Windsor, love your download. Lots of love from India. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, this video that we're doing now, this live stream, will be on my YouTube channel as a video to watch on demand, obviously. And then in terms of download, obviously you can download it if you are a YouTube premium subscriber. But if you're not, the audio version of it will be out a few days later on my podcast, which is called Short Corners, and that is now reachable on Spotify, Amazon, Google, and Apple, and downloadable on all of those. So enjoy. As I say, I've just put a new one up. I do the live streams. I do my races on there as well, the 3 days of each race. Plus, I've just put one up about Jim Clark, and I'll be doing a lot more additional content in the months to come. Death Destruction. The audio during that screen share was much clearer and direct. It didn't have the echo from the room. What, from the room I'm in now? I've got a very low ceiling here and a very thick carpet. I can't imagine there's an echo here. I'd like to think not. But yeah, it's worth saying. I mean, that interview I did with Linus was done on Zoom, and I've got to say the quality was unbelievable, wasn't it? Partly helped by how good his internet connection was, and hopefully mine was good as well. And that's one of the issues, obviously, with all these things, Riverside and all these new platforms that are out there. They presuppose that everybody's got amazingly good internet, and for most meetings that you have, large companies, everybody always has good internet. But when you're in my business and it's motor racing and you're talking to various people in various parts of the world, you'd be surprised how bad their internet is sometimes. That's why I'm always a bit loath to do it unless I really know they're going to be switched on about that. CM Gamer, good evening, Peter. There's a nice docuseries on YouTube by Live Film Productions about Roland. It's nicely done, gives some background on Roland and his unusual path to Formula One. Yeah. And a very good guy to talk to always about Roland is David Brabham, who got to know him pretty well, his teammate, of course. And David was very, very shook up by all of that and handled it really well, speaks about it really well today. Good man, David Brabham. Got a lot of time for him. Rahul Lecky says, Peter, really looking forward to this weekend's Miami Grand Prix. Would be good to know from your perspective what are the top things to watch out for. Thanks. The aquamarine coloured Pirelli caps they're producing, especially for Miami, to reflect Miami's golden beaches. Could be very hot and sticky, could be wet. It's a bit tropical there. So if it's wet, it's very slippery track surface, I imagine. So that'll be one thing to watch out for. I think how well Red Bull, in theory, will get the car sorted in that only untimed session they have prior to qualifying for the sprint race. And the fact that it's a sprint weekend makes it a slightly less interesting weekend, I think, because there's less chance that others are going to get the car right. It's a very, very long straight. You can't run a lot of wings, so therefore it will favour Red Bull because they've got such efficient aerodynamics that they'll be able to run minimum downforce and still have pretty good grip, whereas everyone else, to be quite quick on the straight, is going to have to compromise on grip level. I think that's what we're going to see. I think it's going to be a bigger gap, if I think about it, between Red Bull and the rest than we've had in recent races. Maybe wrong, hope I'm wrong, but the layout of the circuit would suggest that. Ollie Evans, have you seen the new Ferrari Miami livery? What are your thoughts on the design? I think it's too busy looking. I haven't actually seen it now. I was kind of saving it for when the car's on the track and I see it for the first time. Because it's quite difficult to judge liveries when the car is stationary, I always think, and have found in the past. I certainly like the light blue overalls and jackets they seem to be wearing, because I was a huge fan of the Dunlop light blue overalls that everybody wore in the 60s. So anything that gets us back somewhere near there, I'll be up for it. Ben4810, Club Lotus, where Colin Chapman is the president. No doubt Fred Bushell was club treasurer then. Yeah, I mean, that Club Lotus thing, I still am a member of Club Lotus, actually. And I love it. Love reading about all the picnics and drives and rallies and stuff that I can never find the time to do, and wishing I was there with a Cortina or a Milan or something. But yeah, I mean, isn't that amazing that Jimmy and Ian Scott Watson obviously drove down from Scotland to appear at a Club Lotus annual dinner, 1960, and Jimmy's in Formula One by now, and they go back, and Ian writes a letter to Club Lotus a couple of days later and says, we actually had to buy our own tickets to get in. Could we possibly have a refund? And the letter says, no, we all had to buy our own tickets. Go away. So this is all Michael Lawless. I met Roland Bunserrider at a few Formula One and DTM races. Wasn't he the race director in charge with Senna's death in Italy? I think he was, yeah. I'm not sure. Charge, is that the right word? He was certainly questioned, as were quite a lot of Formula One people, including Adrian, obviously. And he was a good man, Roland. Is a good man, Roland. I've always had a lot of time for Roland. So, obviously nothing happened. And why should it? Because his decision, the decision to not stop the race and put the safety car out was certainly not Roland's. I can tell you that. Right. This is all people when I started to go live now, so we're well behind. Terrible lag on all the questions. Usual story. Sorry about that. Brendan Farahani. Hi, Peter. Thank you for all your content. I was wondering if you ever have had the opportunity to drive an F1 car, and if not, which car would you want to drive? Yeah, I have. I've driven an ex-Jim Clark Lotus 49 Cosworth. I've driven a Lotus 21 Climax Formula One car. I've driven a Tasman Brabham. I've driven a Renault Turbo, Eddie Cheever, Alan Prost era. I've driven a Renault V10, Ralf Schumacher car at Ricard, 15 laps. And yeah, loved them all. They were all brilliant. I'm probably forgetting something. I think I've driven something else. I'm trying to think what. Driven a Tasman Ferrari as well, Dino 246. Anyway, that's some of the ones I've driven. Is there if a car you'd want to drive? Yeah, I'd want to drive a Lotus 25. I'd love to see what a 25 is like. Not sure I'd fit in it, but anyway, I'd have a go. Jackson Rodriguez. Hey Peter, do you have a close relationship with Adrian? If so, do you communicate with him frequently? No, not on a frequent level. I mean, if he does something well, I send him a WhatsApp and congratulate him, and he sends one back and says a few things. And equally, if I bump into him somewhere at a function or at a race, we have a bit of a chat. And I've interviewed him several times over the years, and I know his son. I've interviewed his son Harry a few times and know him quite well, and I know quite a lot of Adrian's friends quite well. So, and I was invited to Adrian's wedding, actually his first wedding, when I was at Williams. So I got to know him at Williams, I guess, more than anything else. And once, famously, in the days when you went over to Mercedes, to Stuttgart, to take delivery of your new 500 SL, which you'd bought with a 30% discount, thanks to Gert Kramer, Adrian and I bought one each, and I went over with a friend, and he drove back Adrian's, and I drove back mine. I had a Beryl, which is sort of metallic, light metallic green, quite nice actually, but Adrian's was a metallic maroon, quite light maroon metallic. I thought, sure about that. Anyway, there you go. I was hoping Ferrari would change their livery to completely blue. I mean, they're all a bit carried away. This isn't because of HP. Everyone's going blue because of Miami. Blue Ferrari. Blue and white I could go with. Nart. Wouldn't it be great if they did a complete Nart thing with the whole Nart logo and the American flag and the blue and white as it was? They might as well have done that. Michael Osoguin. Hi Peter, do you know who Audi's dropping for Hulkenberg? No, I don't actually. It's I mean, Zhou Guanyu is paying for that drive, and I'm not sure anymore that. Well, I mean, maybe next year they still need his money, I guess. Not need, but they would like to have his money. Whereas Valtteri is being paid for the drive, so on that basis, you might see that it's going to be Nico and Guanyu Zhou, but then equally Carlos might go there, and then it'll be Nico and Carlos, obviously. But of the two, as much as I'd love to see Valtteri in a quick car, I fear it might be Valtteri that they replace, because if it's only going to be one driver, because Guanyu does bring quite a lot of money to the team, well, a lot of money. Who do you think Newey will bring to Ferrari if he goes there? I'm not sure he will. I think he'll go there and see who's there, and he'll love is it Enzo Piano or Giorgio Piano? I can't remember his first name. Enzo Piano, I think, designed, or Sergio Piano, maybe. Sorry. Anyway, Signor Piano's wind tunnel design. He'll love all that, and he'll get to know everyone before he goes crashing in with his own people, I think. Yeah, I just had the super chat there. This is another super chat just come in. Let's have a look. Can't thank you enough. This is from SP99 DRAC9R. There you go. Can't thank you very much for your super chat. I appreciate it. Can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts so generously. Truly. Are there any legal or other constraints stopping you from live streaming your commentary for the ultimate virtual Formula One watch party? Yeah, there certainly are. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do any sort of live audio over live pictures, or even if it was sort of a minute delayed, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. So I stay well away from, doing anything that might upset the Formula One powers that be, because they've been very good to me over the years, and there's no point in antagonizing anybody. Other people may try and do it, but as much as I'd love to do it, I just think it's not worth the hassle, because it is. It's a bit like VPNs. I've had this discussion before. VPNs, yes, they're all good for security and cybersecurity and all that stuff, which is really good. But the bottom line is most people buy VPNs so they can watch geo-restricted content outside their area, and that's encouraging people to watch. If I do it, is to watch Formula One in areas in which they shouldn't be watching it, and so therefore, Formula One have said to me, "We'd rather you didn't advertise VPN." So I go along with that. A lot of people ignore that or don't even think about it, I suppose, and just go ahead and do it. But I kind of respect that, because Formula One's money, a lot of it is coming in from pay-per-view television now, the Skies of this world, and it is diluting their product if you are encouraging people to buy VPNs. Yengarth Gooden. Adrian to Andretti, no guarding leave would apply. Yeah. Well, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I mean, he certainly loved Indy the time he did at Indy, Adrian, and got into it big time. He loves racing. He loves racing. He loves being a race engineer on the pit wall and just engineering a car. He loves driving and he loves racing. He loves travel too, I guess. So, Ben4810 says, I went to the Jim Clark rooms in the 90s, as it was called then. That's right. And inquired about the gold helmet and other trophies not on display. They're safely in a bank vault in London, was the reply. Yeah, well, they were actually with Isabel, Jim's youngest sister, and I was talking to her son-in-law at the event, and he said that they've just recently decided to put it on display in the museum. So there's the golden helmet. If you haven't seen it, it's worth going to see. Red Bull hypercar, yeah. Well, have to be somebody else doing that now. Luke Noonan says Max will replace Lewis at Ferrari in 26, 27. 27 maybe. I can't see Lewis allowing that to happen for 26. Can't see him allowing, if he's contracted for 27, I can't see him being happy about it either then, but anything could happen, I suppose. What would that be then? That would be Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Adrian Newey. Doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Phaedrus Socrates. If Andretti gets options signed from Newey and Max, not contacts, could they force Formula One's hand? Well, they would then, for sure. Absolutely. But there goes all their budget, doesn't it? By signing Max and Adrian, what money have they got left to do anything? So, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, it's a good point, but as I say, even as they are at the moment, I think Andretti is starting to get a bit more traction than we had a month or so ago. I think there's a lot more happening, and I'm pretty, not confident's the wrong word, I'm pretty bullish about the FIA rethinking their approach to the whole Andretti thing. And I keep saying the FIA because for a start, the statement came out on FIA paper and FIA notification. And secondly, I know some of the top Liberty people who are absolutely livid that it went that way. And by the way, have you heard that Sting is going to be live at Austin? Mega. I hope I'm going to be there for that. Sting, the guy that I took to Monza in circa 87 when we were testing, and he did a lap of Monza with Michele Alboreto. Loves Formula One. He'll love that, doing his concert. I think there's a bloke called Eminem or something, probably the support actor Sting, I imagine. Okay, Lucas Noxio. I think people that expect Red Bull to lose everything don't understand why Newey was important. He built and trained a complete aerodynamics department over 20 years from scratch. That is what made Red Bull 18 plus. I think you're right. There's no way he does everything on his own. Of course he doesn't. And there were certain years when he wasn't doing very much office time as well. So yeah, of course he's built up an amazing infrastructure, which brings me back to my point. I can't imagine why Max would want to leave that Newey created world, even if Adrian himself isn't there anymore, to go to the confusion at Mercedes. Andrew P says Newey obviously going sailing, check Oyster Yachts World Rally. Phaedra Socrates says Ferrari took Hyundai colours. Yeah, Hyundai i20 light blue. Yeah, I get that. Isn't it Korean Air as well? It's also Lotus Elan blue. I'm going to go and get my Lotus Elan and show you. There you go. Ferrari blue. Beautiful, no? Wouldn't it be great to have that actual car? I love it. The actual bonnet opens, the boot doesn't open, the bonnet and the doors open. Great model. Lovely. So that's the blue. That's the blue Ferrari you got to have. I think they do. Where are we going now? Everybody's talking about Adrian. Let's get on there. Ben4810 says, Peter, Eddie Jordan's involvement as Adrian's manager in the extraction from his contract discussions with Red Bull, laughing, yeah. If there's a deal to be done and a few pounds to be made, Jordan's there. Yeah, absolutely. Good on you, Eddie. Well, as I say, they're mates from Cape Town, aren't they? That's where they spend the winters together. Andal Pierre says, with landing Sir Lewis and Sir Adrian, would Frederick also become Sir Fred after returning Ferrari to the World Championship? I think he becomes Légion d'honneur, doesn't he, or something? Robert Sears, if Adrian goes to Ferrari, which team would give Max the best shot at winning the Drivers' Championship in 26? I would say still Red Bull. It'd be very tempting to think of other teams, but I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. I would say Red Bull. Very good race team, Red Bull. Still some unbelievably brilliant people there. Right. Fabian Gonzalez says, hi, Peter, big thank you. I've followed you since 07, reading your blogs. Blogs? Oh, yeah, kind of online, but also F1 racing. Did you think Newey will trigger an exodus from Red Bull? R.I.P. Ayrton. He was my childhood hero. My dad's hero was Jim Clark. Well, it sounds like you got life sorted there. I don't think it'll trigger an exodus at all, no. I think there'll be a lot of people who will be very motivated to want to show that Red Bull can continue to win. Not to show up Adrian, but to show that there is a great team behind Adrian, and as good as Adrian is, it's not going to be the end of Red Bull. I think that'll be the motivation. This is M. Would you expect Max to follow Newey even if he has taken Leclerc's seat? If he has to take Leclerc's seat? So you're thinking if Adrian goes to Ferrari, Ferrari might then say, well, Charles, even though we just re-signed you for 4 years and a mega money, you're out, mate, and we're going to sign Max. And Lewis, oh, by the way, you got Max in the other car now. I don't think Fred would do that, honestly. I just don't think he would. I think it'd be such an unrest. It'd be in so much instability. I just don't think he would do that. Apopapava says Charles has the talent of a champion. It's a matter of time. Charles' spinning during practice is natural since he's constantly exploring the absolute limit of the car so that he can deliver P1 and Q. Yeah, well, hasn't got much opportunity to explore the limits of the car and this weekend because it's a sprint race, so he's got to do all his spinning in untimed practice if he's going to do it. Well, let's have a look. I have to rush a bit because it's now 2 hours since I've been going. Got some other stuff I've got to get on with. J Max, talking about earlier, we were talking about does Max do much behind the scenes, and he says J Max says Max does a lot, or Jay says Max does a lot to get drivers from less fortunate backgrounds into the sport via sim racing. So that's a good point. Yeah, I said there's a lot Max does probably that we don't know about or need to know about, and he just does it in his own quiet way. T3HGIR, watching 2000 season again and realizing parallels between Michael Ferrari and Max Red Bull, the team to beat, better than others, but not just domination. Thoughts? Well, yeah, I mean, the difference was the Bridgestone thing. That was the massive difference, that Michael engineered with Todd and Braun a situation whereby Ferrari effectively were exclusive on Bridgestone. Other teams were there, but they weren't front-running teams. And so all of Bridgestone's technical expertise went into maximizing the Ferrari. Never happened before in Formula One, probably won't ever happen again. And all the key opposition were all on Michelins. So not that there was anything wrong with Michelins, but there were 3 or 4 good teams on Michelin, so there was nothing like the same technical focus on one team, if you see what I mean. So Michael had this nirvana of this incredible relationship with Bridgestone, and obviously Ross doing a brilliant job as well, and Chris Dyer, his race engineer, was on the case, and Todd, and the whole thing was just, Michael put that whole package together. And I think that shows probably an area of talent that Michael had that maybe Max doesn't have, or doesn't even want to go and explore, which is Michael had this ability to pick good people, Nigel Stepney and other, Joan Villeneuve, to pick good people and get them to Ferrari, Rory Byrne, get them together to work as a group. Jackie Stewart could do that very well. He got the Stewart Tyrrell team was pretty much 50-50, I would say. Ken did a great job, but Jackie was just as good at getting people to gel. And Niki Lauda and Luca Montezemolo did a reasonable job together at Ferrari when they rebuilt Ferrari in 73, 74. But then Prost, when he tried to do his own team, didn't really work out in a number of political things that he kind of didn't get right. And so not all drivers are good at that. And Max, I don't know, we've never seen him in that opportunity, in that situation. But if Max went to Haas Ferrari and said, clean sheet of paper, unlimited budget, who do you want to get? Be interesting to see what he would do. I don't know whether he has that sort of approach that Michael had. So they would be the biggest differences, I think, the tyres and the way Michael put that whole thing together. And Max has managed to get the best engineer of his era, Adrian Newey, to gel with the best race team run by, a very good group of mechanics and very good people on the ground in the pit lane. Jonathan Wheatley. Adrian says Ferrari should let Newey design a road car and name it after him. Well, yeah, they probably will. An Enzo and an Adrian. Okay, another one saying, no, don't discount Adrian going to McLaren. Everybody's just got all their own opinion on where they think he's going to go. So it's Shashank Kunji Bentu says, did Leclerc's management have anything to do with Mattia Binotto's exit after 22 seasons? Seems like Ferrari hiring Vasseur has been good. Yeah, I mean, they never really got on because Charles was a from the previous era, and so Binotto never really embraced Charles, I don't think, and Charles thought Binotto was more favouring the other side of the garage. And so I think he probably did push quite a bit to get Vasseur. Yeah, I think you're right there. Nida Vida. What's your opinion on Lando? Does he really have a mindset of a winner? I think he has the mindset of a winner, definitely. And he has the grace and he has the suppleness of a class act as a racing driver. And I think he's as good as Jenson Button. And Jenson Button's won the World Championship, admittedly a bit of a funny year 09 with that Brawn, but he won the championship. He certainly won a lot of good Grand Prix. And I think Lando, in the right situation, the right car, if McLaren get better, I think he can win a lot of races. I really do. I really rate him very highly. As I said before, I think his one thing is that he doesn't try to explore shorter corners and extending the straights in and out of the corner the way Max constantly does, as Oscar is kind of trying to do, as Charles does, as Lewis does. But even putting that to one side, he's, as I say, to me, he's as good as Jenson Button. Mark Philpott, I can't believe you didn't put Alonso up there with Max and Lewis. Really? In the top 3 of the talent? No, I wouldn't put Alonso with Lewis, Max, and Charles because of his initial turn in and because of the errors that result from that when he's on the absolute limit. I think as a race driver, he's very, very near them in the way he can massage a car and he can do all sorts of things with the car mid-corner, and his footwork and his handwork, as we saw, is sublime. But in terms of the ultimate lap, I don't believe that his initial steering input will ever allow him to be as good as Charles, Max, or Lewis. It's just the way he drives. It just is the way he drives, and he's never going to change. And it's fun to watch, and I love it. But we're talking about ultimate pace for one lap. That's what I was talking about anyway. But I mean, as a great racing driver, he's obviously one of the greatest of all time. No doubt about that. Andrew Easton Gibson. Hi, mate. Hi. We're talking about I guess it was your grandfather, John Easton Gibson, who thought that Jim Clark wasn't well enough known to justify earning any starting money for the 59 sports car race at the British Grand Prix. Oh, well, I'm sure Jimmy himself didn't worry too much because he was a nice gentleman sheep farmer, but I think Ian Scott Watson was not very impressed with that. Anyway, great to hear from you, Andrew, and hope you're well, and hope your team of drivers go well this weekend. I know you've got Pierre Gasly to cheer for, and hope he goes well. Hope he has a good race. He needs a decent race, doesn't he, really? Alpine's starting to show a little bit of something in China. Let's hope it continues in Miami. Dino Brain. Hi, Peter. I'm convinced Lance is driving to make his dad happy, not himself. I'm also convinced Formula One isn't interested in driver competition. 1 or 2 star drivers is enough for the marketing team. Well, I don't know about the latter thing. I think everybody in the marketing team would love to see lots of drivers winning, love to see 10 different winners in the season, if not 20. How they would create that, I've no idea. Well, they'd probably do reverse grids, wouldn't they? So let's not go down there in case they actually think it's a good idea. As for Lance, I'm convinced Lance is driving to make his dad happy. But you mean he's kind of scared of his dad and doesn't want to upset him by saying, I don't want to be a racing driver anymore? Be kind of a big thing, wouldn't it, if he did come to that conclusion after all this money, all this effort? I think I'm going to play tennis, Dad. He probably is a bit worried about that, but I don't know. Be interesting to see if Lance can put a complete weekend together. He seems to have these moments. I mean, incredibly, he was quickest in FP1, wasn't he, in China? What was that all about? He got a good lap in on soft tyres. I suppose not that well. Most of them did run softs. I think only Mercedes and one other team didn't run softs. Everybody ran soft, but he got in a good lap. And then comes to qualifying, and he can't believe how little grip there is. Can't believe it. It's crazy. Herbert Williams, a new 26 model Ferrari. Yeah, well, there you go. J Samurai 79 says Lewis is a unique talent and probably has the greatest story in Formula One history. Yeah, I think he does. And he's done more with his fame and acclaim probably than anybody else in the history of Formula One. Certainly in America, long before Liberty started to create new races in America and start to bring American fans into Formula One via Netflix. Lewis was out there doing the chat shows in America. I mean, Michael did quite a lot in America as well. Not as much as Lewis, but he did Letterman and a few others, didn't he? He loved going to the States as well. But Lewis really embraced it and has done a very good job in America. And in general, I think he's done a great job as a world champion. David Murphy, do you think the rumours surrounding Red Bull's 26 engine program having major problems could cause Max to make the move to Mercedes? Well, not having heard these rumours, I can't comment. All I know is that Phil Prue is there now running that. I can't think of a better man. They've got a very, very good team of people at Red Bull Powertrain, and they've got Ford, if they need them, on the electrification side. So I can't imagine they're going to be anything other than a brilliant power unit in 26, I have to say. So rumours? What are rumours? Surf Souse. If Max goes to Mercedes, which looks likely. Really? Really? I can't believe this. Everybody thinks he's going to go to Mercedes. Why? Why would he go to Mercedes? It could only be... Well, I can't even think of a reason. I can't even think he would do it for money. Why would he do that? Anyway, who would let's assume it for some unbelievable reason, i.e. the world revolves in the opposite direction, or something like that. Will Red Bull then target Lando and Oscar? Well, Lando's blown it by signing a mega long-term contract with McLaren, and Oscar's available, I guess, at the end of the. Well, maybe Oscar's quite long-term as well. There'll be a lot of money there to Zach if they did that. So I don't know. I think Carlos Sainz would be the first option, wouldn't they, if that happened? You got me a bit worried now that Max might go to Mercedes. Why? Why would he do that? Dominic Oxford. Hi, Peter. Is Miami a rear limited circuit? Which teams do you think the circuit will favour? When you say rear limited, you mean you think the rear tyres are going to go off before the fronts? Is that what you mean? I think. And I think that's probably the case. There's quite a lot of traction episodes there. The actual G loading is about sort of moderate in Miami in terms of the corners relative to some of the other circuits. Long straight, they don't run a lot of downforce, so yeah, probably the rear tyres will be worked pretty hard. So yeah, I think that is the case. Which teams do you think so? Well, I think it's which teams will the circuit favour? Sorry, which circuit? Yeah, which teams will the circuit favour? I think the problem is it's because it's a sprint weekend that kind of nullifies the characteristic of the circuit, because other than the fact that it's a brand new, it's a street circuit, so there's no groove there and it's very smooth, so there'll be no grip in that first and one and only untimed session when they can set the car up. And in that, so what you're really talking about, who is going to do the best jobs in that 1 hour of untimed practice? Answer Red Bull, because they got a nice big sweet spot in which to play, and they won't be perfect by any means, but they'll get a car that's half reasonable, half drivable. And then the usual suspects, McLaren and Ferrari probably will have reasonable cars, and everybody else will be struggling, I suspect. Maybe Aston. So Ron Smith says Max and Joss are looking at 26. I don't think they'll change anything for 25. Well, I think that's right. And in 26 they might well stay where they are, but anything could happen by then, obviously, so they wouldn't be committing anything. Andrew Easton Gibson, who manages Pierre Gasly, disclosure, says Pierre to Mercedes. Yeah, good one. Why not? I think he's very underrated. I'm not saying that because his Andrew's there, but because he is underrated. He's a very talented driver. Quite emotional, but you know, we want that, don't we, sometimes from some drivers, and he's good. He's very quick, as is Ocon. No doubt Ocon is quick too. So Pierre does. I'd love to see Pierre in a really quick car. Dexter sitting outside is looking as if he thinks it's time to go for a long walk. Let's have a look at the Damien Reed. Hi Pete, do you really think Adrian would move to Italy? And working from the UK reminds me of the John Barnard experiment, which didn't work. What's the chances he'll go sailing or enjoy his old cars? Well, I think there's a good chance he'll go sailing and enjoy his old cars. Classic cars, I think you'd like to call them. Rather, old cars. Did it not work? It produced the 693, which was the first paddle shift Formula One car. Nigel won first time out. They didn't win a championship, but Enrique Scalabroni did a very good job with that car, despite John Barnard leaving at the end of that 89 season to go to Benetton. And it was a very good car in 90, wasn't it, that Ferrari, Mansell and Prost? It was unreliable, but very good. And I like to think that the setup we created in England at Godalming, Shalford, sorry, not Godalming, was very good, where Gordon Murray is now, actually. I think Gordon just moved to a bigger place, but where Gordon's been for quite a long time. I think we had a really good setup, and I think it worked really well. And Adrian may well say, okay, you know, I want place. I don't think he will, though. I think John did that because he just wanted his people, English fabricators, machinists. He wanted the whole thing done in the British system way. And whereas I don't think Adrian would be, it's only my opinion, but I don't think he would be that emphatic about that. I think he'd be quite intrigued to see what Ferrari have got and how he could make it work. So I think whether Adrian would move to Italy, do the usual thing, he'd rent a villa, wouldn't he, or something in Maranello, not one of those lovely villas. So anyway, get to the bottom now. Let's see what that's got some funny questions here, but I'm not going to go through those. Somebody being a bit odd. Yeah, I think we'll Jacob says, hi Pete. Peter, I think, actually. I'm not that worried about it, but I think Pete should be reserved for Pete Lyons, a much better journalist than I ever was or am. Very good American writer. He was Pete Lyons, and I'm Peter Windsor. Only because I take my hat off to Pete Lyons. I don't want to be in any way included in a bracket that might include Pete Lyons. Hi Pete, there are rumours that Kimi Antonelli will replace Sargent after Miami. What are your thoughts on Kimi, and do you think he's worth the hype? Don't really have any thoughts. I've seen him as much as most people. Well, I probably haven't seen him as much as most people. I saw him a little bit last year, not doing very well, and then seen him in the F2 races this year. He doesn't look to be a second lap quicker than Oliver Behrman, does he? And the hype would suggest that he's the next Ayrton, and Oliver Behrman looks pretty good to me. But anyway, we'll see. Well, I say we'll see. It's a platitude of a response. The answer is I don't know enough about him to be able to really make a comment. So I shouldn't be. I will, as soon as I can really see how he drives, I'll let you guys know. Chris Ward, also it would seem to me that Piastri might be in play given Lando's contract and the vacancy at Merck. Yeah, well, I said that when if he'd stayed at Alpine as he was declared as a race driver, he would probably, I don't know where he'd be. He'd probably be in a Merck already. Right, okay, lots of Charles stuff. So, yeah, just to reiterate, I don't know if I made a big enough deal about. There's a lot of quite critical stuff about BBC and Sky Sports. I can't believe it. Sarosh Soman, hi Peter. Vettel was struggling in 14 since he wasn't able to maximise with an unstable rear. My observation is that he does quite well in wet races, though. Wanted to know your thoughts, please. Yeah, because a wet race would neutralise, not completely, but it would certainly partly neutralise that imbalance. And being an unbelievably good V driver that can brake to a really good rotation point, albeit very slow minimum speed, it does, when it rains, he's very, very good at finding the grip and doing that and going to the outside and coming back again and maybe staying on the outside. So he's really good in the wet. Always has been. Really good wet weather driver. And it goes without saying that even though I'm quite critical of Vettel sometimes about his propensity to just brake in a straight line to a V thing when he can on any given corner, he does have incredibly supple and soft inputs. He's really, really good on that. And if he does have a moment, he's incredible. He could do what Fernando did in that moment in China. I'm sure Vettel could have done that at his peak as well. Okay, I'm going to have to pack it in now, guys. Dexter's getting very edgy. Oh, here's another super chat. Was Senna's cockpit very damaged after the 94 crash? No. It was a little bit like the Mike Spence accident. He was in the Lotus 56 at Indy in Jim Clark's car, actually, just a month after Jimmy had lost his life. And he was just doing a run, just a bedding in run, and hit the wall, and the front wheel just came back and hit him in the helmet. The car was perfect apart from that front wheel coming back. And a little bit like that with Ayrton. I mean, the chassis was pretty good. Obviously, it gave in a couple of areas, but did pretty well. But it was the suspension arm into his helmet that did the damage, and because of that, tethers became much more of a thing. Bedtime in Australia, night all. See you, Surface. Surface. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to the bottom and see what the last one was. There's a lot of chat between you, which is good. Yep. Okay, I think we got there. There a bit of a talk about whether Lewis has been signed for money, but I'm sure at the top level, that's possibly why they rubber stamped it all. But at Freddie Vasseur's level, which is a very high level, but nonetheless not the board level, it would be because Lewis is a very, very good racing driver, and he'll fit in very well with Charles Leclerc. And if we have a good car, he can well win races and maybe even the championship. That's what Freddie would have been thinking, because he knows Lewis so well. He's raced with him so much. So there we are. Good. Thank you everyone for taking part, and I'll be back again with the 3 videos I'll be doing over the weekend, which are all late at night. Probably going to be quite short. Get to bed. I'll do my best. So it's a sprint race, so it's a bit funny, isn't it? You never really get to the heart of a weekend when it's a sprint race. But anyway, what can you do? That is what it is. So this will be up on the YouTube channel, and then I'll put it up, I don't know, probably next week. Actually, it'll go up as an audio file in the podcast. In the meantime, I'll be doing more videos this weekend. Thanks to Pitbox, thanks to Jetcraft, thanks to OEM Exclusive for their support of this channel. Without those 3 companies, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. So big thank you to them, and thank you to you, the viewer, as well. Stay safe, and see you very soon.